scent of potpourri, films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly podcast reviewing one or two new release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. You can find more of our work, including written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also write into the show by emailing me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can get access to content at any of our tier levels on a recurring monthly subscription basis, or you can buy individual collections a la carte in the Patreon shop section. This week on Patreon, I released a new Patreon Potpourri episode in which I reviewed 4 movies I watched recently. This week's edition of that covered The Day the Earth Caught Fire, Panic in Year Zero, Testaments, and The Quiet Earth, which all came from the Criterion Channel's post-apocalyptic sci-fi collection. And also, I'm continuing my Flanagan Friday series, where I'm reviewing Mike Flanagan's work each week. I'm in the thick of The Haunting of Hill House right now. And then also on Saturdays, I'm doing Sci-Fi Saturday, in which right now I'm currently doing Foundation Season 2. All that's available at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media, including Letterboxd, at Obsessive Viewer. And today on the show, we're doing our annual year in review episode where we share our movie watching stats and top 10 favorite movies from the year. It is a monumental episode that we do every year. And of course, joining me for this are my co-hosts, the OG co-hosts of the podcast that will always be on these episodes. It's Tiny, who can be found on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/obsessivetiny, and Mike, who can be followed on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/IamMikeWhite, and whose band As Good As It Gets provides the theme music for this podcast and can be found at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Tiny and Mike, welcome. How is it going, you guys?
Hey. How you doing?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing good.
Good.
We're excited. This is the one.
Yep.
We look forward to it. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Every single year. I can't, I felt kind of, not guilty, but I felt a little bit weird because I've been doing this whole going weekly thing, which is going very well, and I'm very excited for the year on the podcast and everything. But this was the first year that we've had episodes in the new year before the year in review episode, and that felt like a little bit sacrilegious to me.
Oh yeah, that's true. We did last week, kind of came out before this one.
Yep. And I had an episode the week before.
But hey, nonetheless, we had this one scratched into the calendar, I think in late November.
Oh yeah.
We've been excited for it all along. This is the staple. We know this one's coming, and any of you obsessive viewers out here who follow along, we hope you're excited for this one too, because we are every time.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, to hell with the Super Bowl. This is where it's at.
This is our Super Bowl.
It is movie watching Super Bowl for us. People have the Oscars and everything, but this is our thing. And I'm gonna say, and this is getting into the meat of things just for a bit before we this is stepping into that. But I do want to say, in terms of the year 2023, for me, it was fine in terms of viewing and everything. I don't have any compunctions about it or anything, but I do want to say that we'll get into our viewing stats and everything. But Mike, 2024, I told you before privately that I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
And
heavy lies the head that wears the crown.
Yes.
And this year I do get to wear the belt, at least until next January for most movies watched. Like you said, we'll talk about when we get to the actual numbers. But yeah, I was just not satisfied with my 2022 numbers. And you came in guns blazing last January.
Yeah.
And so I set some goals for myself, and I kind of realized about halfway through the year, I was like, oh, I think if I stay the course, I think I'll have the belt this year.
Yep.
So pretty excited about that. And I I'm excited to do battle, I guess. I don't know. It's not a contest.
Yeah, hashtag not a competition. If
hashtag not. Yeah, I feel like it's been hashtag not a competition for 3 years now.
It really has. But here's the thing, Mike. If suddenly like time shifted and like right now, like we were suddenly transported to January 15th, 2025, and like we had to do like our current like year in review of 2024, I would be talking about the 25 movies I've watched so far in the first 2 weeks of 2024.
Yeah, you're going hard. I like to not to take credit for it, but I hope my stats last year kind of lit a fire for you. A little bit. And I will say that a big part of it also is that we actually got a very nice donation from a listener. Shout out to Carol. She made a holiday donation, and with that I got a year subscription to Criterion Channel. And so very cool.
I've been watching a ton of Criterion Channel stuff, which, by the way, not an ad or anything, but if anyone listening is interested in a year-long annual Criterion Channel subscription, right now for new subscribers, they have like a winter sale that's like 20% off. So it's like $80 instead of $100. So, check that out. It's really cool. And I'm doing a lot of Patreon potpourri stuff on that as well for Criterion Channel stuff. So anyway.
So when you mentioned that you're coming for my title, my crown this year, I don't want to disrespect you enough to say that I concede already, but I kind of went into this year toward the end of last year, 2023. I was like, I'm definitely going to take it a little easier in 2024. So I have a feeling you'll probably take the title unless you slow down in the summer. But we'll see. Time will tell. We have a whole year yet.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, like it's not like it ebbs and flows. Like anytime, like
yeah, absolutely.
Last year, 2022, I had a huge year. 2023, not so huge. 2024 is shaping up to be really huge. So it ebbs and flows. But anyway, how was everyone's year? Tiny, how was your 2023 in just general terms? And then we can get into, once we go around, we can get into the viewing stats and all that good stuff. Like personally and professionally and everything. How was your 2023?
2023 was pretty dang good. I changed jobs again. Actually went back to my old company and in a different role, and it's what I've always wanted to do. So I'm really loving it so far. It's going great, busy, but it's awesome. And then kind of in my personal time, I've been really ramping up volunteering a lot, and so
Nice.
I'm on my local Lions Club. I'm on the board, and I do a lot of. I'm the marketing director for the club, and that's been really cool. Reaching out to the community and volunteering through that. I bundled up in like all my Carhartts and volunteered at a food pantry on Saturday morning when it was freezing cold. I've been doing that throughout the year. That's really cool. And then back in October, which when we get to stats, it'll be funny. I have 0 viewings for October, and the reason is because I hosted and ran an entire volunteer program at the end of the month that was over 50 volunteers working on 14 different projects around the town, and it was a huge commitment and a really big deal and just nuts. And so that took up my whole month, but it was just really super cool. We got to help all these people, and it was fantastic. So all that stuff really made the year incredible. But when we get to the movies, you'll see that that's where it took a big hit, which I will say it's kind of par for the course. That's how I've been trending lately. So it's not a huge deal. I mean, I'll talk about it, but
well, you still have the all-time crown.
Yes,
360 whatever. Yeah, one a day in that 1 year. So.
Yeah,
I do.
I think you have bragging rights for a decade after that. I think that's the OV rules.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
I was gonna make a crack about like this was not gonna come across well or anything, but I was just going to say when you said that you did a lot of volunteer work and didn't watch anything in October, I just wanted to be like, so selfish, Jesus.
That's awesome,
but not at all. That is incredible, and it's awesome that I've told this. I think I've communicated this to you at some point, but like it's really cool to see you be so involved with the community, like in terms of like the town of Speedway where we both grew up. It's just really cool to see you be so involved with it and everything, because it's we like it there.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Cool.
Yeah, that's impressive, man. Very cool.
Yeah,
thank you.
So, Mike, what kind of volunteer work and resource work and everything have you done?
I'm not nearly as altruistic as Tiny is. I mean, I work with the community, but the high school pays me to work with those kids. So my students, shout out to them. Hey guys. Yeah, no, I had a great year. 2023 was kind of one of the best if you step back objectively.
Nice.
My kids' brains are kind of coming online now, and they're kind of like cool people now.
Nice.
I don't feel like I'm, keeping babies from hurting themselves. I'm actually like talking and hanging out with my kids and playing video games and doing stuff. Over the summer,
how old are they now? Sorry.
Yeah, so my older son is 7.
Wow.
And my younger son is going to be 6 in March.
Wow.
That's so they're little dudes now. They're just fun guys. And like I said, we went to the Grand Canyon this summer, which is amazing. I had never been. That's kind of like a bucket list item. We love that. Like I said, lots of family stuff. My boys and I had a lot of fun. We played Zelda. Tears of the Kingdom this November. Like they just kind of watched me play it. That was really fun.
Nice.
Personally, my band, my partner Dustin and I, As Good as It Gets, we put out something like 25 songs this year. We did a full-length album of original songs. We did an EP of acoustic songs, and then we did another short EP of original songs. So a lot of work on music, and super proud of our output and making art and creating things. So yeah, it was a great year. Family stuff, fun stuff, movies, all kinds. It was great.
Very cool. Very cool. My 2023 was okay. It's been like there's been a lot of stuff going on and everything, and I have high hopes that 2024 will be good. But I did do a lot of podcasting and Patreon stuff over the year, which helped keep things together for me, which is the best I can say about any kind of rough patch I have or whatever. I have this avenue to go down to create content, and I really enjoy doing that. So, but yeah, overall it was a good year. I got to see some great movies, and that's about the most I can think of. Work has been something, but it's hopefully going to be improving. My work life will be improving in 2024. Hopefully, fingers crossed, in some capacity.
Willing it into existence.
Yes. Yeah. Stress levels have been kind of up and down a little bit, but I'm here and it's good. So yeah. So I have high hopes for 2024. I don't have anything specific or anything. But I am very thrilled though that Mike, you now have cats. That is
oh yeah.
That is so
I guess that shows how much I think about animals, that wasn't in my my year recap. Yeah, we did get cats. We adopted 2 girls, they're sisters, and my wife found them on like somebody was fostering them for a little while for the Humane Society, and I kind of always said that I would never get cats. And she just kept sending me pictures, and I couldn't figure out what to get her for Christmas, so I just decided to go with the cats. That's a joke, of course.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I just caved. They looked so cute, and I realized kind of what my reluctance to get a cat or really any animals is I don't love other people's animals all that much. I don't like go to your house and like pet your dog. I don't know. I just don't. But we got those cats 3 or 4 days before Christmas.
Nice.
And they're just the sweetest things. I love them.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, they seem like if they were fostered for a while, I would assume that they're pretty well-mannered.
They are. Yep. And they've acclimated, and they are sleeping between our legs all the time, taking up space on the couch. They're adorable.
Cute.
Tiny,
Mike,
sorry,
did your dogs pass away? Are they gone?
So our older one did a couple years ago. Waldo, the big dog.
Waldo, I remember Waldo. Okay.
Yep. He died. 2021 or so. And that was sad. So that was my wife's dog, kind of before we got together. And my dog, before we got together, Kevin he's still going. Old man. Still trucking along.
Nice.
He's very lazy, very tired, very grumpy, and he just kind of lays around and sleeps all the time. Yeah, he'll be 13 this year.
Oh wow!
Oh
yeah,
wow.
He's an old guy.
Nice.
Okay. Cool.
But what I was gonna say, Tiny, is now it's your turn. You got to get a cat.
Oh man, I like being alive though. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's fair.
The allergies and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So, like, I've got one cat. Mike has 2 cats. That means, Tiny, you need to get 3 cats.
3 cats.
Those 3 cats you will adjust to them. The allergies will go away, or either the allergies will go away, or you will,
or I will.
Welcome again to the Obsessive Cat Podcast.
Yes.
This podcast is brought to you by the Evansville Vanderburg Humane Society. Send your donations their way and send us pictures of your cats.
Yes. Seriously, you can send pictures of your cats to me for sure.
Matt actually wants pictures of your cats.
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, for more stuff like this, check out Patreon, obviously. But do you guys want to get to our stats and get into
let's talk movies.
Get into the show. Yeah. So, what we do, this isn't like a normal year in review top 10 list episode. What we do, because we are obsessive viewers, we stat track. We go through our watch stats, like we go through all of these different things that we have. In years past, we have done that manually, and then the advent of Letterboxd came about, and that has been a lifesaver and time saver. We cannot be more thrilled that Letterboxd exists. So we definitely recommend everyone listening to get a Letterboxd account and follow us.
Not
for sure.
Not a sponsor, but if Letterboxd is interested, we are heavy Letterboxd users.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, we are.
Yes. Again, Matt at obsessiveviewer.com. Anything can go there. Letterboxd is amazing, and we use that to track our stats. We're all, I think you guys are pro members, and I'm a patron member, which is the higher tier one, not to flex, but it's that comes with stats and everything, so it's a lot of fun to go through them, and that's what we're going to be doing tonight before we get into our top 10s. So let's get rolling on our viewing stats for the year 2023. We're going to go kind of round robin. We're going to start with Mike, then Tiny, and then I'll give my stats. Mike, do you want to throw us your numbers for your viewing stats for 2023 and share with us how it went in terms of movie watching?
I absolutely will. Thank you. And I will brag a little bit, because that's kind of what we're doing here. I won the belt. I won the crown this year. I watched the most. Last year, I watched 123 movies, and I was kind of disappointed with that. That is, I don't know that that's an extremely low number for me. I've had some low years, especially the first couple of years I had kids. But then I was able to kind of get back up. So to only do 123 in 2022 was unusual. So I kind of made a goal for myself. I said monthly. I wanted to watch 200 for the year. And so I said monthly, I want to make sure I watch 15 movies per month. And I exceeded that pretty easily. So my total viewings for the year was 238 viewings. That's 149 first viewings. So 62% of the movies that I watched were first viewings. Rewatches then were 89, so that's 38%. In the theater, I saw 53 movies, or 53 viewings, I should say. So that's more than one per week. And I didn't see a lot of movies on repeat. We see something new most of the time, but I did see Scream 2 twice.
Nice.
For 2023,
I love that you called it Scream 2.
Scream. I saw Scream 20 21 Part 2.
Yeah, 22 Part 2.
Yeah, 22 Part 2. Yeah. No, Scream 6. Sorry, 2 times. And then 2023 releases were 67 new 2023 releases, which is 28%. And so that's 433.9 hours viewing movies this year.
That's amazing. Well done. Well done.
Nicely done.
Feel good about it. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Nicely done.
As you should.
And
awesome.
it never felt I never felt particularly bogged down by it. I did set out in October to watch one every day, which I haven't in a while. Usually it's like as long as I hit 31, I'm okay with that. But I wanted to watch one a day, and there were a couple days that got a little hairy. But I was able to do it. So other than that, it was pretty easy.
Nice. Well done.
Sweet.
Thank you.
And how is movie night going in general? Like, is it any like standouts for the year or in terms of?
I'll talk about those. And do we want to do memorable?
Oh yeah, we can do that later. Yeah, we'll do that later.
So I'll save that. Yeah, movie night is still going strong. Obviously, COVID was a hiccup, but other than that, we never miss. Still great. Movies have been pretty great. I'm interested to see. I remember in 2012-ish, which was kind of like 4 years after that big writer's strike. We had some not great movies for a little while, and we wondered how bad. So I'm curious to see the writer's strike that we just went through, if there's what the fallout of that is going to look like the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I will say 2024 is not the most excited I've ever been for movies.
Yeah.
I think some big stuff obviously has been moved out of the year. So we'll see. But other than that, yeah, movie night has been great.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah. Tiny, do you want to hit us with your viewing stats for 2023?
Yeah, it's going to be a little culture shock for the listeners because it's like almost the exact opposite of Mike's. So it's kind of perfect. So in 2022, I had 96 total viewings, and I wanted to crack 100. That was my goal, and I failed because I got to 82 viewings for 2023, so 14 less. Yeah, not ideal. I'm not happy with it, but again, it's I wanted to talk, or one thing I could sort of hinted at in the kind of introduction is that that number decreasing is balanced out by other things, other parts of my life really ramping up, and those other parts of my life are awesome.
You're a good person is the difference. You're a good person, and we just want to stay home and watch movies. So
Well, thank you for that, but
I think you're building a different case for yourself.
You spend 50 hours a week teaching teenagers, which is the most magnanimous thing there is, in my opinion.
Well,
so.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I am here just making Patreon content.
Yeah, Matt, I know you're going to talk about it later, but you shared with us some of your statistics for podcasting and writing reviews and all your IFJ stuff. I mean, it's
ridiculous.
Talk about building a portfolio. That's incredible what you do every year. So,
well, thank you. It's it is very much self-involved on my part because I love doing it, but no, yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, but you keep this going for us too, because this is an outlet for Mike and I as well. So and other people. So
yeah,
that's
of
awesome.
Course. Oh yeah.
So yeah, 82 for the year. Not great. Not thrilled with it, but it's more than a movie a week. I mean, I guess I have to keep throwing these caveats in there when these numbers are so low. But first viewings, I had 38. Rewatches was 44. I actually ended up seeing 8 movies in the theater, which is not bad. I don't know if I think that's fewer than last year. I'm not sure, but yeah, eight's actually not bad given how many stretches I had where I watched nothing. So yeah, there was a stretch. So October I had no movies, and September I had 1. June I had 2. I think March I had 2 or 3. So I mean, it was just long stretches of nothing. And yeah, it was a goofy year, but 181.7 hours was the total viewing time for the year. So again, it is what it is. But I still saw some great stuff, and I struggled at the beginning of the beginning of the end of the year. So like kind of December, I was like, man, my top 10 is pitiful. And I had a bit of a push in December, and I saw some great movies. I'm happy with my top 10. So at least there's that.
Yeah, I love looking at your stats page because you can see like the last week is like the biggest week that you had, which we'll talk about in
doing the push
and all that. Oh yeah,
for sure.
So
Right.
it's very good.
Right.
But yeah. So you had 82 viewings. That's good. And like 8 theater viewings. That's impressive too, given the amount of like how much time you didn't have to allocate to movies. You had enough time to allocate to 8 theater viewings, which is pretty impressive.
I think that's more than the average American.
I think so too. Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So did you give all your stats or any others?
I wasn't sure are we doing like views per month, week, biggest day, all that stuff?
Oh no, we'll do that here in a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think that's it for those are my main stats for the year.
Okay, cool. Well, I will give you guys mine. So I had 2022. I had a pretty big year. 339 movies watched, 339 viewings. I was pleased with that in 2022. And then in 2023, I guess took like a little bit of not sabbatical, but like I didn't focus too much on movie watching. So I ended up with 184 viewings total, which is a 45.72% decrease from 2022. Of those 184, 147 were first viewings, which accounted for 79.9% of the total.
Holy cow.
Jeez.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And only
what's the percentage again? Of first
79.9% of my total viewings were first viewings.
Yeah, that's
wow,
that's a lot.
Yeah,
wow.
and I had 37 rewatches, which accounts for 20.1% of the total viewings, and that is down from 111 rewatches in 2022. I had 228. Okay. Let me rephrase the first viewings for comparison. So first viewings in 2023, I had 147. That's 79.9% of my total viewings in 2023. That's compared to 2022, 67.3% of my total viewings in 2022 were first viewings. And then rewatches were 37, like I said, 20.1% of total. In 2022, it was 32.7% of the total viewings. So it's a little interesting, I guess, mildly interesting. So rewatches are not very much a big thing in my life right now, I guess.
I'm sorry to cut.
Oh no, go ahead.
Sorry to cut in on yours.
Only because, of course.
I think my first viewings and rewatches are a little skewed heavy toward first viewings, even more so in most years. But this year I really kind of, really since quarantine, I've like made lists of like movies I haven't seen in a while that I need to watch. Yeah. So if there's not anything immediate, I'm usually pulling from that. So my rewatches have been up this year, kind of intentionally. So nice. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No. That's a great point, because rewatches by design should be like for what we do in terms of being obsessive about our viewing and being people who want to see new movies and new releases and be up to date with everything. Rewatches are like the real comfort food. Like taking time to rewatch a movie that you've already seen when you have like the entire catalog of every movie ever made at your fingertips, basically, that's a big ball of anxiety. It
is, but I think it's the where we kind of make this distinction of Obsessive Viewer is like we're not it's not your normal movie review podcast of everything. We also claim, like, I don't want to throw out these are my top 10 favorite movies of all time if there's one on there that I haven't watched in 10 years. That just doesn't feel right to me. So to me, there's something affirming about like, I need to check in with this movie to make sure that I'm still obsessed with it. That feels like obsessive behavior to me.
Oh, absolutely. I actually have a private list that I haven't really looked at and I might have deleted it, but I'm not sure. But on Letterboxd, I have a private list just for my own thinking of movies that made my top 10 lists in years past that I've only watched one time.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great list.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to make that list.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot. And yeah, it's interesting. Maybe I'll talk more about that when we get into our top 10s, but basically it's a whole thing. But so okay, back to my stats. Theater viewings in 2022, I had 52 theater viewings, which I was very pleased with. In 2023, I only had 39, which accounted for 21.2% of my total viewings of the year. I'm pleased with it. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more this year since I'm kind of focusing the podcast on being more consistent. So a lot of that's going to be new releases and it's going to be stuff that I see in theaters, and I'm really going to put my A-list subscription to work. And I say that having been just in my apartment all weekend because it's cold outside and I'm scared to go outside when it's cold. So like I had plans to go see Mean Girls, the 2024 version, today. And I was just like, I'm just going to watch Criterion Channel or something. So, but
I don't blame you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that was theater viewings, 39 total, of the year, of my 184, total viewings in 2023, of those, 103 of those were 2023 releases. So that was, that is 56% of my total viewings, were the year of release. And as Tiny mentioned before, like I am a member of the Indiana Film Journalists Association, and part of that is we get screeners for end of year viewing, and we get for awards consideration for the IFJA awards. I have an episode that's kind of become a tradition now that the last episode of the year has kind of turned into a breakdown of the top 10 movies of the year as voted on by the IFJA. But so like, if you look at my stats page for like the last few years, like starting in like beginning or mid October, it's just a ton of viewings because it's just screener season. I'm just watching stuff so I can throw my weight behind what I want to watch or what I want to win and everything. So I'm very, very pleased with that. I'm very proud of that, of the affiliation I have with the IFJA. It's a very good group. So that was 56% of my total viewings for 2023 were 2023 releases. In 2022, I had 127 year of release viewings, which was 37% of the total viewings. So I still broke 100 year of release viewings each of the last 2 years. And finally,
that's impressive, man.
Thank you.
That's really good. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very pleased with it. And then all of that accounts for all of 184 viewings accounts for 334.3 hours of time spent watching movies, which is 13.9 days. I spent 2 weeks of the year watching movies.
I want more.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Could not be more pleased. So those are my viewing stats. Do you guys want to talk about some special theater viewings or memorable theater viewings if we have them?
Sure. Do you want to do that and pair the other stats together?
Yeah, let's do that.
Kind of just buzz through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The rest of the Letterboxd page.
Yeah. Okay. Mike, do you want to get us kicked off?
Yeah, sounds good. I had plenty of memorable and special theater viewings this year. It was great movies and also great fun at the theater. So the first one I'll talk about, and I know we don't do worst of lists anymore. I think that's kind of a waste of emotional energy.
Yep.
But I do have a worst movie of the year that I want to talk about only because it's so surprising and shocking and disappointing and bad, that it was a memorable theater experience. And that was Charlie Day's Fool's Paradise. I could not believe how bad that movie was, considering who was involved. It was honestly, I'm sorry to dogpile on a movie because we, especially in the last several years, we celebrate movies rather than knocking them down. But it was it was bad, and it was really bad. It was one of the worst I've seen since we kind of declared we don't do worsts anymore. Just so disappointing and so bad. Anyway, so we'll talk about the good.
Yeah.
So Scream 6, obviously I'm going to talk about it later in this episode. Scream is one of my favorite franchises, if not my favorite franchise. First time I saw it was a blast. It was great. The second time was cool. I had tickets to something like a 3:30 show, and it was all the way on the other side. So I work in Boonville, and it was on the other side of Evansville, a 45+ minute drive.
Jeez.
And so I flew home, or not even home. I just flew straight from work to go see Scream 6 by myself after school. And it was just cool, a little like something to be excited about after school and see it by myself.
Nice.
In October, we saw Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, which I watched at home and I liked it, but in theaters it works so much better. The intensity of the visuals and the pulse pounding of the sound it's so effective on the big screen. It really kind of changed my opinion of the movie completely, or amplified my opinion of the movie. I always thought it was pretty great, but it was excellent in the theater.
Nice.
And then finally I saw Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem with a bunch of friends, and Oscar and Howie, my sons,
nice.
Came to their first movie night. So my friend and I, we do our movie nights every week. We had a bunch of friends. Pat, shout out to Pat, the Nerds You're Looking For. Another friend, Johnny K, went, and then my kids were there, and Jake brought his niece and nephew, and it was just cool. We had a whole group, and my kids were excited about seeing Ninja Turtles and being at a movie night, and it was just a lot of fun. So that was really cool.
That's awesome. That's very cool. And do you want to just go around for the special theater viewings? Because I don't think Tiny and I are going to have as much to talk about, and then we can circle back to Letterboxd stats. Yeah. Sorry, but anything else on theater viewings?
No, that was, lots of great ones, but those were the highlights for sure.
Very nice. Tiny.
Yeah, I only have two. They both took place at the IMAX theater at the State Museum here in Indianapolis, which is the best theater in town. And the first one was Oppenheimer. We got to see, we were some of the first people, I want to say, definitely in the country, maybe in the world, to see it.
Yeah.
Because it was because I saw it with Matt, and we were at it was the Thursday before it came out. I think it was a special viewing.
Yeah.
Or maybe was it a Tuesday?
It was, I don't remember what day it was, but it was that was a trip. That was awesome. And especially because that theater is one of the only theaters that has 70 millimeter capabilities, true IMAX. And there were people, it was a combination promo / press screening, I think. And there were people who traveled from Michigan and Chicago just to see, to go to that screening. It's really cool.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Packed house. That we'll talk more about that movie later, but yeah, just that experience was super fun. And then few months later, I got to go see a remastered version of Close Encounters of the Third Kind from 1977. My dad went with me, which was super cool because I remember as a kid, I have a memory of watching the VHS of that with my dad, and it's one of the first movies we kind of bonded over. And so it was really cool for me to be able to see that with my dad in the theater. We both cried. It was really cool.
That's nice.
That was really memorable. It was an awesome remaster, or the job they did remastering. I think it was 70 millimeter. I don't know if they gave us those details in the theater. I don't think they did, but it filled the screen really well, and it looked really great. The sound was on point. They really did a good job with the sound. So yeah, it was a great transfer, and there was a lot of people there too. So it was a really fun viewing.
Nice. And it was a Tuesday that we saw Oppenheimer.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
That's
it for me.
Nice. Real quick, I just have a few that I want to talk about real quick. I kind of kicked off the year in the theater in 2023 with a viewing of 2001: A Space Odyssey at Keystone Art, which I like that. I don't remember if I mentioned this on the podcast last year for a year in review or if it had happened yet, but basically 2001: A Space Odyssey, one of my favorite movies of all time. I have seen it since 2013, I have watched it 8 times. Each of those 8 times since 2013 have been in a theater, which I'm just so happy about that. Like, I have not watched it like at home since before 2013, before the podcast, which is crazy to me. And it sucks because I had the chance to see it again in the theater a week or so ago, but I just didn't feel like up to going to it. So, unless it comes up again in theaters sometime this year, I might break that streak and watch it at home, but we'll see. But I'm very, that was a memorable theater experience in 2023. And then also just a couple of highlighted ones. The Oppenheimer screening was awesome just because 70 millimeter, amazing. Biggest screen in the state, amazing. And then also a couple of ones that I really enjoyed. Just the experience is like, I saw Talk to Me by myself, and I'll talk about that movie later, but like that experience was so, like, I was squirming in my seat because it was just so like visceral, and like it just got so under my skin. It was great. And then on kind of the opposite end of that, in terms of horror, another memorable theater experience was Thanksgiving, which was unbelievably fun and awesome. Cool. I loved it. And I do want to shout out Scream 6 as well, even though it like I saw it early in the year, but I do want to point out, and this is going to sound like a weird flex, and I don't mean it to at all, but like Scream, like Mike said, it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite franchise of everything. It is the franchise that defines who I am in some ways, who I've become. And it's interesting because it's a franchise that I've seen in the theater multiple times. Like I've seen every movie in that franchise in the theater. Thankfully, I got to see Scream 1 in 2022 or 2021. But this was the first time that I had the opportunity to go to a press screening for it. So when I saw Scream 6, it was, before it came out, and I was very excited about that. So that was cool.
Cool.
And then finally, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It's a terrible, shitty movie, but I got to see it with a group of friends, and it was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable just to be in the theater. Like opening night, the Thursday that it opened, and we were a group of like 6 guys, and there was maybe 4 other people in the theater. It was not a good swan song for the DCEU, but it was still a fun experience because just a group of people was a lot of fun. So those are my memorable theater experiences for 2023. And Mike, do you want to circle back and go back to our Letterboxd stats, which are stats that can be found on our Letterboxd stats pages? So if you go to letterboxd.com/ our username. So like for me, it would be letterboxd.com/ obsessive viewer / year / 2023. Just go to the profile, click stats, you'll find it. Mike, Letterboxd stats for 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just kind of buzz through these because I'm getting excited to talk about our top 10 lists.
Yeah.
So here we go. Like I said, 238 films logged, which is 19.8 per month. Which my goal was 15, assuming 31 in October, and obviously I beat that goal. In 2022, I had 10.2 per month. My average viewings per week is 4.6, which kind of surprised me, almost 5 per week. That's kind of a lot. So 2 days a week I didn't watch a movie. 2022 was 2.4. My biggest week was October 2nd through the 8th, where I watched 10 movies. So that's no surprise. Usually early October, I watch a bunch. In 2022, September 12th through the 18th was 10 films. I had COVID, so I watched a lot of movies that week in 2022. My busiest day of the week, again, no surprise, is Thursday. It is extremely, extremely rare that I miss a Thursday of watching a movie. So that's obviously my busiest day of the week. My first film was a movie you guys loved very much, but I did not, was Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The last film that I watched for the year was Brooklyn 45, which is great because that movie takes place in that liminal space between Christmas and New Year's. So I wanted to watch it then. My most watched movie was Scream 6. I watched it 3 times, and I watched a couple movies twice. Spider-Man, Super Mario, Goodfellas, Sandlot, Scream. My biggest genre is horror, and then after that is comedy. My most watched actor is Bill Hader. Also Tom Cruise, Samuel L. Jackson, and Margot Robbie, all 5 movies. And then my most watched directors, I guess I watched a lot of directors. So Scorsese, Steve Miner, that's the Friday the 13th movies, David Bruckner, Matt Bettolini-Olpin, and Tyler Gillett, or Gillett, however you pronounce their name, for the Scream movies. That was my 2023 in stats.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny because I'm going to have some overlap with you on that. It's interesting. Yeah, Tiny, your Letterboxd stats for 2023.
Yeah, so one of the main stats I forgot to mention, just real quick, 2023 movies, 2023 releases, I only saw 22, which is embarrassing. So that's not good. But I squeezed a top 10 out of that, which is impressive. So I'll take that. Average views per month, I was 6.8. Views per week was 1.6, which I'm okay with that. Biggest day of the week was Sunday. That's my laundry day. I hang out down in the basement. I got a nice TV set up down in the basement, and I literally stay down there like most of the day and just do laundry all day and just watch whatever I want to watch. So
I kind of love that, honestly.
That tracks. Yeah, it's like I kind of appreciate doing laundry because I'm like, it means I get to sit down and watch whatever I want to watch all day long. So Sunday was the biggest day of the week. My biggest week was the last week of the year. I watched 9 movies. I think I watched like 6 in one day or 5 in one day.
That's amazing.
Because I had a lot of time off at the end of the year, which was great. We didn't make a ton of plans, so I got to just. I think it was one of my Sundays. It was a laundry Sunday. I watched like 6 movies, so that was awesome. Nice. First movie was The Banshees of Inisherin. The last movie was John Wick Chapter 4. This is fun because I'm not going to talk about the movie anymore the rest of the time, but my diary milestone, so my 50th viewing for the year, just happened to be Scream 6. So that's or Scream 2022 Part 2, as Mike calls it.
Right.
So because I know you guys love that franchise, I like it. Mm-hmm. I'm a fan of it for sure, but it just I don't have it in the same regard as you guys do. But I thought that was a fun little piece of serendipity, I guess, that it was my milestone for 50th of the year.
Nice.
I wrote 3 little blurbs / reviews this year for Sly, Gran Turismo, and randomly Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So if you're interested in those at all, go look at that on my Letterboxd. Most watched movie was Tenet. I was really into that movie this year, and I wanted to watch it multiple times because I feel like I'm starting to understand it now. Most viewed actor was so this most viewed stuff is going to be another Marvel year because I rewatch those movies all the time. So most viewed actor was Robert Downey Jr. with 8. I also had a bunch of the other Marvel actors, Sam Jackson, Dave Bautista, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson were up there as well. Most viewed director was Christopher Nolan with 5 viewings. I also had Ridley Scott on there, Peter Jackson, Russo brothers, James Gunn, Peter Berg. Most popular genre was action, 43 movies. So more than half was action. So I think those are all my kind of fun stats for the year. So yeah.
Very nice. That's yeah. Again, this is why we love Letterboxd. We used to do this stuff manually.
I know. Yes, that's so crazy.
Yeah,
it was awful.
Yeah, I would literally spend New Year's Day making a Word document of everything. It was insane. So my Letterboxd stats for 2023. In terms of the bar graph for week by week, I did have a couple of. This is so interesting to me because I don't remember exactly how what I filled my time with in these weeks, but I had two times where I had 2 weeks of no movies watched, which is very atypical for me. And what's interesting about that is that those 2 weeks, or those 2 sets of 2 weeks, it looks like it was Memorial Day weekend fell on one of them, which is weird because I have Memorial Day off and like I could just watch movies. I didn't know what I did that day. And then the other interesting one is in the 2 week span where I had, and another 2 week span where I had no movies watched fell on like my birthday, which is weird because I usually like to watch a movie on my birthday, but I didn't this year. But from there, I watched movies every week, and starting with week 40, so October 2nd through 8th, I watched 12 movies. That was one of my high ones. That and the final week of the year, I both watched 12 movies. And then in between those two weeks, October 2nd and December 31st, like each week was like between 5 and 11 movies watched each week. So really finished strong. Averages per month, I had 15.3 movies watched per month on average, and average per week was 3.5. My biggest days were Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sunday taking the top spot at 38 movies, and Friday and Saturday tying at 33. My first movie of the year was the Max documentary, This Place Rules, which I watched on January 6th because it was about the insurrection and everything. The last movie I watched of 2023 was Slacker by Richard Linklater on Criterion Channel because I was just devouring everything I could on that streaming service. Milestones, 50th movie was Fast X, 100th movie was Fair Play, which is on Netflix, and 150th was Next Goal Wins, which don't really have anything to say about those, but most watched, I watched Scream 6 3 times, like Mike. And then I had 6 movies that I watched twice over the course of the year. They Came Together, one of my favorite comedies of all time.
You do love that movie, man.
It is one of my most watched movies, just overall. Like in my overall stats, it's like my second most watched movie. I love it so much. But They Came Together, Barbie, Oppenheimer, Bottoms, Scream 22, and The Dark Half were all movies that I watched twice in 2023. It's funny because The Dark Half, if I could just say that I watched that movie twice because I wrote an essay for Midwest Film Journal that you can find on my 2023 archive page. So go to obsessiveviewer.com/MattHurt2023. You'll find a link to that essay and everything that I did in terms of writing, podcasting, and so those are those stats. Top genre, Mike. I think that you'll be pleased.
Hit me.
My top genre with 59 films was horror.
That's surprising.
It is very surprising. I hit the ground running really hard with watching horror movies throughout Shocktober. Yeah. And I watched a ton. I have a list on Letterboxd about it. But I watched a ton throughout Shocktober. I watched a ton of horror movies. I also did like a weird like tandem rewatch that I abandoned eventually, but tandem rewatch of Halloween and Friday the 13th franchises. So I got like 3 movies into each one.
That's right. That's
right. So horror was the top one, and then comedy came in second, and then drama. One of my goals for this year, which I'm spoiling later in the episode, but one of my goals is to get more into sci-fi this year. So last year, sci-fi is kind of bringing up the rear a little bit, along with romance and crime. And then what else? Okay. Top stars, top actors for 2023. We have Randall Park with 6 movies, David Dastmalchian with 5, Pete Davidson with 4, and he's tied with Stephanie Hsu, Carrie Elways, Greta Lee, Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, Kurt Russell, and Kurt Russell for 4 movies watched. And then also Eric Sang has 3 movies, which is because he's in all 3 of the Infernal Affairs trilogy, which I watched at the end of the year, which brings me to top directors. The top 2 directors with 3 movies are Alan Mack and Andrew Lau Wei Kyung. They directed all 3 of the Infernal Affairs trilogy, which I watched at the end of the year. The rest are just 2 movie directors of movies that I watched. David Cronenberg, James Wan, M. Night Shyamalan, Ridley Scott, Damien Leon, because I watched Terrifier and All Hallows Eve. Was that the anthology movie?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Watched those, and then Steve Miner, and then Radio Silence. So those are my top viewed directors. And that should just about do it for my Letterboxd stats. I have some that are like rated lower than average, higher than average. We don't care about that. Check out my stats, Letterboxd. So that's what we've got for Letterboxd stats. What comes next? Are we getting into the meat of it now?
I think this is it.
I think so. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about first movies we missed. If we have any movies that we didn't get a chance to watch before compiling our top 10 list that we think could potentially have been on the top 10 list, or that we just couldn't make time for, Mike, what are some misses that you had in 2023?
Yeah, I kind of scraped a barrel for this. Anatomy of a Fall. I don't know that would have ended up. All of Us Strangers, May, December. I don't know that any of those would have ended up on my top 10, but I do have a feeling they will be getting some Oscar interest. So I'll probably check those out eventually. The one that I really tried to see, because Matt, you're going to talk about it later, is Poor Things. And it was on the dock for movie night last week. And we ended up kind of getting out a little far over our skis, and we thought we could squeeze in a trip to B-Dubs before the movie, and we could not, and B-Dubs took too long, and then so we missed it. We ended up seeing Night Swim at a later time, so I was disappointed to not catch Poor Things before then. I've heard nothing but great things about it. I'm excited to see it. We might see it this week, but that's kind of the big one. That's the main one.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, it was a bummer when you texted me and said, never mind, we're not making it to it.
See you Night Swim.
Yep.
People love Night Swim.
Right. Do they? Yeah.
Sweeping awards left and right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I actually didn't hate it, but
I didn't hate it either, but yeah. I love Wyatt Russell. I will say that, and I'll be reviewing Night Swim next week on the podcast. So yeah, there's that. Tiny, movies you missed.
Yeah, the biggest one was actually what Mike just said. Poor Things. Heard so many good things about it. I really missed that one. Really, ones I missed this year is too many to name because I only saw 22 movies from this year. So, I mean, there's just tons. But another one that jumps out is Godzilla -1. That sounds really cool. Dream Scenario looked really fun. I really dropped the ball on horror this year. I saw hardly any horror movies this year. And the one I saw, Talk to Me, I liked it a lot. And I feel like horror is going through such a great, maybe this is a wrong interpretation, but I feel like it's having a great upswing, if you will, in just great movies over the last half decade, maybe even decade. And I really missed the ball on that this year. Movies like Thanksgiving, I really wanted to see that. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff I missed this year. I'm going to try to catch up. We'll see what happens.
Nice. Yeah, I'm very curious what you think about several of those. So, yeah, for sure. The movies I missed in 2023, All of Us Strangers is the big one that I wish I would have gotten a chance to see because it kind of seems like it's the type of movie that I would really enjoy. I also, before finalizing the top 10, I didn't get a chance to see Ferrari. I have since seen Ferrari and have since reviewed Ferrari and didn't really like it all that much. So, yeah, not too big there. But other movies I missed were How to Blow Up a Pipeline. I heard really good things about. Also, I heard really good things about Dix the Musical. And I wish I would have made time to see that. I don't know if it would have made my top 10, but it sounds like it was at least a lot of fun. Other movies on my radar that I missed were Master Gardener, The Royal Hotel, and Dumb Money. I didn't really make time to see Dumb Money, specifically because by the end of the year, I was kind of burnt out on that brand of like true life corporate movie thing. Which is to say Blackberry was really good. So that was good, but I don't know. Those are the movies I missed in 2023. And do you guys want to give any honorable mentions that you have? And I'm going to present that as a caveat with the caveat that I'm not going to give my honorable mentions because I've already done that on Patreon. So,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So January 1st, I released a full length episode on Patreon to all the tier members that were, that's my 2023 podcast and writing stats and honorable mentions. I basically just geeked out over how much I wrote and recorded on across all avenues and everything, and shared my honorable mentions. So if you want that, I'll have a clip at the end of the show that has like the podcast stats and everything. But if you want my honorable mentions, they're on Patreon. And with that, I will yield the floor to you guys for your honorable mentions for 2023.
Well, I definitely have honorable mentions. And oh, geez, it's like I'm almost nervous to talk about them because they're kind of significant, and they're two movies that are, I imagine, on your year-end lists, and one of the movies I know for sure is on many year-end lists. So the first one I'll mention is Oppenheimer is not in my top 10. And before you turn off the podcast and before you cancel me, I am fully aware how amazing that movie is. And the first time I saw that movie, I think my review said that it's the best movie about America since There Will Be Blood. But I got to be honest with you, since I saw Oppenheimer over the summer, I've thought about There Will Be Blood more often than I've thought about Oppenheimer. I understand the technical achievements of it. I think Cillian Murphy is great. I love that there's this new like Cillian Murphy versus Paul Giamatti battle for Best Actor. Like, what a cool Best Actor battle this year that I'll be rooting for either of them. I think the technical achievements that Chris Nolan was able to accomplish on screen are brilliant. The movie is amazing. Like, I get it, and I enjoyed my experience. But when I thought about what movies I was excited to talk about and what movies in a couple years I will have watched multiple times, I kind of just decided Oppenheimer was not one of them. It's not a movie that I'm like excited to talk about, despite how great it might be. To a lesser extent, Killers of the Flower Moon is an honorable mention that's not going to be in my top 10. But I feel kind of the same way about it. I am a Scorsese fanboy. I almost connected to Killers of a Flower Moon a little bit more after watching it than I did with Oppenheimer, except that, again, it's not a movie I want to watch again. It's a movie about bad people for 3 hours, and that's kind of tough to watch. And I just haven't thought about it much, despite its technical achievements, but despite Leonardo DiCaprio being excellent in it, despite Robert De Niro being excellent in it, despite Scorsese. I just haven't thought about it a lot, so it kind of ended up on my periphery, and I just want to apologize to anybody who loves those movies. Me not including them in my top 10 is not saying that they don't belong in your top 10. They're just not. I'm just not super excited to talk about either of those. The one that was difficult to cut out of my top 10, and it kind of got nudged out at the end, is When Evil Lurks.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a horror movie that was straight to streaming. I believe it debuted on Shudder. And it was by the director of Terrified. And it is just it was the feel bad movie of the year. Yeah. A horrible horror movie. Horrible in the best way, in that it was horrible. You feel horrible watching it. Some brutal kills. They really pull no punches in terms of like the intensity of the deaths and the depths they're willing to go in the sadness and depravity depicted on screen. When Evil Lurks is a gnarly movie. And in a weaker year, it would have ended up on my top 10. I'll say in a weaker year, Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon would have ended up in a top 10. All three of those are top 5 movies of 2020. When we look back at our 2020 episode, which was just 5 decent movies and then some okay movies.
Yeah, 2020 was terrible. I will say that When Evil Lurks, I believe, did have a limited release in theaters.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. It didn't come around here in Evansville, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. So When Evil Lurks, Oppenheimer, forgive me, and Killers of the Flower Moon, forgive me.
Nice. Tiny, any honorable mentions?
Yeah, actually, some overlap with Mike. I have Killers of the Flower Moon on mine as well.
Cool.
I for some of the same reasons. I think I feel like it was the structure was a little convoluted in it. It was too long. I will die on that hill. That needed to be a shorter movie. It just had its issues. Great acting, decent writing. But yeah, I couldn't get over a couple of those things. I just finished today a documentary by Alexandra Pelosi called The Insurrectionist Next Door. I like her style because she's very raw. I've seen several of her documentaries before. She's very raw, not over edited. And I appreciate that because it's a real genre where you're talking about real things and real people. So I appreciate how grounded her filmmaking is as a documentary filmmaker, and just such a unique situation, to make something about these people who did this ridiculous, stupid thing on January 6th, 2021, to actually be there and to have their reactions as to what they did and how they feel now. I thought was a really good idea for a documentary. And then the third one is Leave the World Behind. I didn't love the movie or anything, but I wanted to mention it because I think it took an idea that's had a lot of traction over the last maybe decade or so. I forget the term you used for it, Matt, but it's like kind of people coming together at the end of the world, kind of a subgenre.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what else to call it, but it's sort of apocalyptic kind of genre thing. That's been used a lot. It got tired really quick.
Yeah. But
there was some freshness to this. There was a little bit of freshness to it, and they made it their own in a certain way, and I thought it was kind of fun and ended up kind of liking it, but wasn't quite enough for my top 10. So those are my 3 honorable mentions: Killers of the Flower Moon, The Insurrectionist Next Door, and Leave the World Behind. Nice. And once again, you can check out my honorable mentions on Patreon. I also wrote about them on the website. I think I have my honorable mentions on that. I have a whole write-up for end of year stuff. Check that out again, obsessiveviewer.com/MattHurt2023. Yeah, that's interesting about Leave the World Behind. It's not on my list or anything, but it was a memorable movie, and it has one of the it's just a fun punchline of an ending. I just enjoyed that quite a bit. Shall we get into the main event, our top 10 favorite movies of 2023? Let's do it. I'm so excited. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So how we're going to go about doing this is like we've been doing throughout the episode. It's a round robin thing. We're going to count down 10 to 1. We're going to start with Mike, go to Tiny, go to me for number 10, then go to 9, 8, so on and so forth. So these are our top 10 movies of 2023. Mike, do you want to get us kicked off with your number 10? I would love to, and I'm so excited to talk about this movie. So my number 10 is still a Michael J. Fox movie. Nice. And I watched it in the first half of the year, and it kind of shot its way up my top 10 list early on and kind of stayed there for the entire year. What was so cool about the movie, so it's a documentary, and it was unlike anything I've ever seen before in that it blended like archive footage, reenactment, movie footage, and like talking head interview into one movie, one presentation. So like, for instance, when he discusses filming Family Ties and Back to the Future at the same time, you see him on set in archive footage
on the set of Family Ties. And then he, in a reenactment, drives back to his apartment. They pick him up. And then he, in this reenactment, so somebody is playing young Michael J. Fox, drives onto the set of Back to the Future. And as he walks on set, there's like a cut, and then it cuts to actual footage of Back to the Future.
Wow.
And it, like, as we go through these top 10 lists and we talk about, like, Tiny, you've already said this movie could have been a little shorter, and we talk about movies being a little shorter, a lot of long movies. If I have any complaint about Still, is that I think it could have been 20 minutes longer. It's pretty short, it's feature length, but it really doesn't delve too deeply or deeply enough into someone who has kind of meant a great deal to me. And though his star has maybe faded ever so slightly here this century, was an absolute mega star in the 80s. He's one of only 2 actors who had the #1 television show and the #1 movie at the same time.
Nice.
And it was just kind of cool to see his story and his star rise blended with the tragedy of his health, while at the same time, like, his determination to, I won't say overcome, that's not fair because he's still struggling with it, but to persevere despite his limited abilities. And it was just kind of cool to see the background footage of him in Spin City trying to kind of conceal the effects of his Parkinson's disease. And it's pretty sad. There's a scene early on in the movie where he is walking out of a hotel and he trips and falls in front of, like, a stranger who is like, "Hey, Mr. Fox, it's nice to meet you." And he just kind of falls because he loses his balance. And just kind of in his signature Michael J. Fox wit is like, "Oh, you knocked me off my feet." And it's just so cool and charismatic to see him take a moment. It's kind of a metaphor for his life, really, to take something that has been debilitating to him and spin it in a positive, optimistic way. He's just such an idol of mine, and I really loved every minute of my number 10, Still, a Michael J. Fox movie.
Nice. Very nice. I did not get a chance to see it. I will catch up with it because I love Michael J. Fox, so I'll definitely have to watch it.
Yeah.
Tiny, your number 10.
My number 10 is a documentary that came out this year called Sly. It is about the 50-year prolific career of Sylvester Stallone. It's on Netflix, so I recommend going to check it out. What jumped out to me is, as a documentary, it's entirely serviceable. It's nothing exceptional in that regard. But what I think jumped out to me so much is just how dynamic of a person and how dynamic of an artist Sylvester Stallone is. I think he has this image. If we talk about the average movie watcher or the average movie fan, the average person all the time on this podcast, because we don't consider ourselves to be that. And we're definitely not. I don't think by any moniker we are. But I think the average person sees Sylvester Stallone as an action star. He's a big action star. He's like, Arnold Schwarzenegger or, I don't know, Jean-Claude Van Damme, someone like that. And he has so much more depth to him as an artist that a lot of people just don't know about. I think a lot of people forget that he wrote Rocky, and he's written almost as many movies as he's acted in.
Yeah.
And he's just a very artistic person, and it doesn't seem that way because he looks like a big meathead. His image doesn't match necessarily what he is, and I always find that interesting. And I just love how raw and emotional and on the table everything was in this documentary. He talked about how terrible his childhood was. He had a really horrible father, and his mother passed away. I can't remember when he was younger, but he had a really rough childhood and a rough life, and he turned it into this really successful career, and he's managed to hold on to his artistic abilities and overcome a lot of different things. And the way that was all captured and highlighted in this documentary, I just thought was great. It was a story that needed to be told, I think. And I just really enjoyed it. It was a really fun movie, a really fun documentary to watch.
Nice. I did not catch it.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm not going to have any documentaries on my list, but I kind of feel like I should have watched more documentaries. Yeah. Great. So that's on Netflix. It's Sly. Still is on Apple TV Plus, I believe, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And my number 10, this is going to be kind of surprising because this is the only time I'm going to talk about Marvel Studios on this list. And it's kind of an outlier of their output in 2023. It's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. In April, I did a Patreon immediate reaction review. I wrote a review on the website, and I reviewed it with my friends Joe and Brent on Obsessive Viewer episode 393. So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I think, is a perfect kind of conclusion to that cast of characters, that very offbeat like sector of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it works really well as a send-off for those characters and a swan song from James Gunn as he moves over to DC for the DCU. But what I really found so amazing about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is that it goes so deep into the character of Rocket and the Guardians themselves, and the way that it just grips you in the pain of Rocket's backstory. Like, I was all in. I was weeping at certain points in the movie. It was very, very affecting. And in addition to that, there were certain aspects of it that I felt just so comfortable with as a fan of science fiction. So, like, there is that whole excursion onto, like, Earth 2 or whatever the planet is that's like Earth but as alien people. Like, that just felt so much in line with the kind of science fiction I like, which is to say, like, the Twilight Zone. It felt like something right out of the Twilight Zone, and I loved that. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is my number 10. I really, really enjoyed it. And it's a shame that Marvel just, from my estimation, has just crapped the bed for the most part throughout the rest of the year.
Oh, that's a whole other podcast. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Yes, it is. But that's my number 10, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It is currently on Disney Plus. Mike, do you want to get the ball rolling, continuing to number 9?
Absolutely. My number 9 is John Wick Chapter 4. And I would say I'm a fan of the franchise, but I don't know that I'm like a super fan of all of them. I think the first one was pretty good, but maybe like I wouldn't have picked that to spawn 3 super successful sequels as a franchise that needed to go huge. And then 2 and 3 expanding the universe. I think people really liked it, but it's not really my I don't know. I didn't think that the hotel and the hitman lifestyle was really as interesting as those kind of movies felt like they were. But Chapter 4, I felt like fulfilled the promise of those movies. It was an expansion, or like the finishing of an arc that was promised in the first movie of this like underground world that we don't know about. I thought the action scenes were bigger and better. The car stunts at the end, like the car / motorcycle stuff in the climax, when he has that I don't know guns at all, but like the flame rounds,
yeah, the dragon's breath
scene, yeah, the dragon's breath. I thought that was incredible, and so it finally paid off. It finally became this like over the top, you've never seen anything like this before type of movie that the other movies kind of promised, which were fine, but I thought that their claim to fame was like just incessant action. I didn't know that it was like special or over the top. I just thought it was like constant action. This felt over the top and special, enough to be on my top 10. Number 9, John Wick Chapter 4.
Nice. I'll be talking about that later. Agreed. It's amazing. Tiny, you're number 9.
My number 9 is a total surprise for the year. It is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yep.
Yeah, I threw it on just out of nowhere. A couple weeks ago, I was like, yeah, my top 10 is pretty much there. I think I'm good, and I'm gonna watch something just kind of fun. And man, it was super fun. I feel like the chemistry amongst the actors was totally like an unexpected ragtag group that I just was not expecting, that group of people to be that, it wasn't like, oh, we're a family now. It wasn't cheesy like that. It was just, it felt organic. Like it felt like it was something that just kind of happened when they were making the movie. And it was just super fun. I mean, it was funny, and they didn't like, they could have just made like a goofy Dungeons and Dragons movie and let the ancillary aspects of the movie just fall away, and it still would have been a fun movie. But like, there's like kind of like a fight scene. It's like the climax of the movie that felt like it was out of a Marvel movie. Like they actually went pretty hard in the paint and made a really cool like action fight scene at the end of this movie, and where like it was like a team up thing. It kind of made me think of like an Avengers movie, and I was like, I was not expecting that at all out of this movie.
That was cool.
And it was really effective, and like it was a fun action scene, and they did a really good job. I just thought it was surprisingly fun and well grounded and funny. Really good script. John Francis Daley, yep. he was one of the writers of it, and I've liked a lot of his stuff in the past. Some of it has not been good, but he's a gifted writer, and I was just really pleasantly surprised by this. I didn't look up how it did. I think it maybe did okay financially. I hope it was good enough to make a sequel or two. I would love to see more. Just pleasantly surprised by Dungeons and Dragons for my number 9.
Yeah, I think it was a success, and I loved it too. It didn't make my honorable mentions or my top 10, but what struck me most about it was that it just, as someone who has never played Dungeons and Dragons, but I know the ins and outs of it from pop culture, it just seems like it just captures that energy of like a team of people, like a party, like doing Dungeons and Dragons. It captures that energy so well, and I was all in. It was fantastic.
Yeah, the whole like, can you just use magic to do this? Like, that was so great.
Yeah. Yep. So that's your number 9. Mine is Thanksgiving. Yes. Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, so freaking good. Yes. So I reviewed it with my friend Brent on Obsessive Viewer episode 403. Thanksgiving is such a fun payoff to the trailer from 10 years ago, maybe more. No, it was like 14.
7.
Yeah, it was a while. So
long time.
Yep. So it pays that off so well. And something that I think I read that Eli Roth said was that what they wanted to do with the movie was treat it like the trailer is this uncovered like relic from cinema history that someone finds and decides to remake or reboot with like a modern sensibility. And what Thanksgiving ends up being is a very just fun, gory, awesome slasher that has so many throwbacks to like 90s era slashers. That's something I wasn't expecting. And I was so floored by it. Yes.
And a whodunit.
It has all the hallmarks of like that post-Scream era teen slasher resurgence in the late 90s. And it does it so well, and it takes itself seriously enough that it's not playing up as comedy. Like the movie begins with a patently ridiculous like Black Friday, surge and stampede. That's the jumping off point of the movie. And it's like all of these people involved are like caricatures, but it plays it so earnestly that it doesn't come across as parody. It just comes across as this is just this weird town energy. And I loved it. And the way it implements all the different like things related to Thanksgiving in terms of kills and like the way that it implements those things in the kills and the violence was fantastic. I loved it. So I can't wait to get it so I can watch it again because I've only seen it the one time, but it was phenomenal. Yep.
Feels like I need to wait for Thanksgiving to watch it though.
Yeah, I won't. I can't wait. I can't wait to watch it again. I just can't.
That's awesome. Good.
Yeah. Yep. So that's my number 9, Thanksgiving. Moving right along. Mike, why don't you hit us with your number 8?
Number 8, my favorite horror movie that's not a Scream movie of the year is Talk to Me, a little Australian horror movie that kind of gained some traction. So probably... I don't know, I don't know what point I'm trying to make here. So horror movies about grief are like their own new subgenre. It's like grief horror is like the new most popular thing to do in horror. And this is another one of them. But what I find or where I take issue with a lot of those is the hauntings or the horror that comes from those grief, films. It stretches the main character's motivation. What's so cool about this one? So Talk to Me is about there's this hand, and it's like this myth that if you talk to this hand, you can see dead people. And so these kids, these like teens, talk to this hand, and they get together and they do this at a party, like it's some night of drinking or doing drugs and merriment. But for them, it's like fun and lighthearted, and it kind of reminds you of being young. But the main character is someone who lost her mother before the events of the film. And when you see them have like this party with this hand where they're like addicted to it, some of those kids are using it just for like fun, for a night of fun teen debauchery. And one of them is the one suffering from grief from the loss of her mother is coping with her grief and building this like negative coping mechanism with the hand that is not just a metaphor for grief, but it's a metaphor also for the way we cope in negative ways with grief, to scary and horrific and sad ends. And Talk to Me is one of the better depictions of grief and that type of motivation. Like the main character does things that are annoying, like don't do that and you won't get in trouble, or don't do that and that person won't die. But the fact that she's like a teenager who is desperate, like justifies those actions plot wise. And I just think we don't get a whole lot of horror that's that clever and that introspective, and has that many themes layered upon one another. You get a lot of teen debauchery, and you also get a lot of grief, but I don't think you see them played the same way. So, Talk to Me was an easy top 10 for me.
Yeah, I'll talk about it later, but man, that movie was just awesome, just so good, so good.
Yeah. Great.
Yep.
I thought it was great too. Yeah. For all the reasons you said. Awesome movie.
Cool.
Nice. Tiny, your number 8.
My number 8 is Maestro, which is on Netflix. We watched this. My wife and I watched this a few weeks ago, and I feel like it's produced by Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, and directed by Bradley Cooper, starring Bradley Cooper. I think that this is a big awards movie, and so I wasn't surprised that I liked it and it was going to be really good. But the part that I thought was really, really well done was the camera work in the movie. I mean, Bradley Cooper, I think it's one of his best performances, maybe his best. I thought he was incredible. Such a good movie from that perspective alone, but I loved the camera work in the movie. I feel like the central core of the movie is this relationship between I never really looked it up if he's just a closeted gay man or if he's bisexual. I don't know what it is, but he's obviously hiding this part of his life. So he has a tumultuous relationship with this woman and who he marries, and it's constant conflict with her, and that's the core of the movie. And I feel like the camera work tracks the evolution of that relationship. Most notably, there's a lot more wide angles and a lot more distant camera work the more they separate, and then towards the end of their lives they sort of come back together and reconcile in a way, and become close towards the end again, and there's a lot more close-ups at the end of the movie. And I was so impressed by how that visual traction followed that relationship, and it had to be intentional because it was so potent in the movie, and I was just really impressed by that. There's also a musical number that takes place in a cathedral. I don't remember the musical pieces. I wasn't really familiar with music, but there's a musical number in a cathedral that was an astounding piece of filmmaking. Again, camera work was just incredible. Bradley Cooper spent, I want to say, 6 years learning how to conduct like this I'm spacing on his name. Leonard Bernstein, I think.
Yep.
It just incredible. That kind of dedication, and he focused on it for that one scene. Just absolutely incredible. So yeah, there's so many good things about the movie, but to me, the camera work was just so cool, and just an incredible creative choice that I haven't seen a ton of that in any movies really, but for this year that really stuck out in 2023. So yeah, Maestro for my my number 8.
Nice. I didn't connect with it as much, but I definitely agree about the camera work is amazing. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Mike, did you get a chance to see Maestro?
I did not.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead and bring us to my number 8. My number 8 is Poor Things by Yorgos Lanthimos. I reviewed it in episode 407 with my friend Mitch Ringenberg, who just got married this past weekend. So congratulations, Mitch.
Congrats, Mitch.
Yeah. So Poor Things was a movie that I was not that excited about, honestly. Yorgos Lanthimos is a filmmaker that I just never have a strong connection with. I enjoyed The Favorite, but everything else I've seen of his work, just feels like there's something that I can't really quantify or articulate how it makes me feel just uneasy in like a weird way. He's so out there and peculiar with his filmmaking that it's a little bit too weird for me is the best way I can describe it. So I wasn't looking forward to Poor Things, but what blew me away about it is the way that it just is this fully fleshed out story of this woman who is created like it's a Frankenstein's monster situation. And she is learning about the world as she is experiencing it. And it's something that's just really well drawn in terms of characterization. The way that she navigates the world, it's so weird. It's very offbeat, like Yorgos Lanthimos is known for, but the character arc is so interesting and unique. And it's something that we talked about in episode 407 with Mitch. He had pointed out that it is a weirdly positive Yorgos Lanthimos movie. It's not that cynical. It's not that like Lanthimos brand cynicism. It is a more positive, affirming movie story, and it's something that just really, really connected with me in terms of visuals, and just like it's so peculiar. It's like Yorgos Lanthimos and like Terry Gilliam mushed together. And it's really something. It's one of the most unique and interesting movies I saw in 2023. And it also was awarded accordingly with my critics group, the Indiana Film Journalists Association. It actually got the most awards for a single movie in the IFJ history.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it got I think 8 awards total. So yeah, I'm very, very proud to have put my initials down for that because I was very proud of or very, very pleased with Poor Things. And that's why it's my number 8.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. Mike, you're number 7.
My number 7 is Scream 6.
Nice.
And there was no doubt that this was going to end up on my end of the year list. I obviously am a Scream super fan. And, I don't know that it's the best one or it's the best sequel. And I think there is still some debate to be had whether this one or Scream 22 is the better one. But I am on the side that this is the better one. To take it somewhere new after a back-to-back Woodsboro movies. I thought that was cool. It was refreshing. The Scream 22 is excellent, and I love that movie. But in that legacy sequel style, it is pretty well the plot of the first one rehashed again. And it is a love letter, but a beautiful love letter to fans. But this one, like most sequels to legacy sequels get to do, is it took it in a different direction. And I liked bringing it to New York. I thought that the chase sequences were better than 5 and some of the best since 2. I thought the Ghostface behaviors, like Ghostface as the killer, not as like the identity beneath the mask, but like the physicality and some of the over the top violence in this one was really intense. The chase scenes were interesting, the scares were interesting, and I think that it really developed the so-called core 4 that were introduced in Scream 5 in a way that really made me fall for them and kind of root for them toward the end of the movie. I don't think that the killer reveals are great. I think they're some of the weakest killer motivations of the franchise. But I'm having so much fun throughout the rest of it that I'm able to kind of like allow its ending. All that said, the fact that we're not getting a Scream 7 or we're not getting a Scream 7 we're not getting a sequel to this movie. Like this the sister story is over. And that's incredibly disappointing, in watching my favorite film franchise dissolve. Go from my favorite entry since Scream 2 to on the verge of like not existing in a calendar year is so disappointing. I can't even believe it. But anyway, if it is the last entry, who knows? Or for whatever version of this franchise we get, if it's the last one of that, it's a heck of a way to go out. Scream 6.
Yeah, it was on my honorable mentions. It's not on my top 10. It probably should have been on my top 10.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised about that. To be honest with you.
It kind of came down. I don't know. I don't know. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. I still prefer Scream 5, Scream 22 to it, but I can't argue any of those points. Like, yes, you fall in love with the core 4 in this movie, and it is
right.
It's spectacular. So yeah, that's my big regret, is not putting it on my top 10, but I loved it dearly.
When we re-roll this list in 10 years, we'll...
yeah. Yep.
You can put it on there.
Yeah. Tiny, any thoughts on Scream 6 or?
Yeah, I preferred Scream 2022 as well, or Scream 5, whatever you want to call it. I liked the, like you mentioned, killer motivations, I guess, and the Scream 2022 was like one of my favorite versions of that.
Me too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because it's so topical, I think.
Right.
I really liked that.
Mm.
Yep.
That was cool.
Yep.
Yeah, and to speak briefly about Ghostface in Scream 6, I do want to say, the Gale Weathers phone call is, I would say, gun to my head or cell phone to my head, probably the best phone scene since Randy in Scream 2. Like,
oh wow,
just the way it plays out is just wonderful. One of the big sticking points that I had in like one of the big things that I always point to when I talk about Scream 6 is that in that phone call, like the way that Ghostface says the line, "Isn't it weird how we've never talked on the phone before?" And like just that simple line of dialogue where it's like, the Ghostface who is calling Gale is personifying Ghostface as an entity. And it's like...
That's what we talk about. We've talked about this before. I love the idea that Ghostface... And I don't... Like, the movie is not pretending to be mythical or metaphysical or anything like that. It's not. I mean, they're real people, but the idea that there's some psychological or presentational difference that when it's Ghostface as an entity.
Yes.
And I think that's so cool.
And to even like in regards or in relation to Scream 5, like this is a switch up on the core level of Scream in my view. Because like Scream 5 is all about, the Stab franchise and the legacy of what it is to Woodsboro and all of that. This is like, it starts with Ghostface in the opening saying, "Who gives a fuck about movies?"
Yeah.
And so like that in relation to the Gale call is like, it's like, yeah, this is the Ghostface entity. Like it's Ghostface is in his entity era.
Well, he's in his New Nightmare era, right? Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yep.
I think it kind of takes a little bit of inspiration from there if we're pretending Ghostface is an entity, where it's not so much about the movies. I mean, Stab exists in canon in Scream 6, but this killer is retracing the actual Ghostface killing. I think that's such an inspired take. I also think so much of that movie is an homage to Scream 2, right? It is a sequel to Scream 5, and I love that mirroring effect.
Yep.
I can't believe Scream 7. I just can't believe it.
I know. Yeah, but we'll table the Scream talk because this could turn into its own episode.
I know. You're right. Anyway, Tiny, go ahead, buddy.
Tiny, your number, we're on 7? Yeah, 7, number 7.
No worries, guys. I get it. Mm-hmm. So my number 7 is Extraction 2. What probably the most fun I had with an action movie this year. Like a true dyed in the wool action movie. I don't know a lot about the director. His name's Sam Hargrave. There isn't a lot about him on IMDb, but if you look at his career, he is most successful as a stunt coordinator and a fight coordinator, and it's amazing how that skill transferred into directing, because it feels like the camera operators when they make these movies have to be stunt guys, because I mean they're taking a camera that's being held on a guy, being held by a guy on a motorcycle, and they're handing it to a guy inside a car to capture a shot. I mean, it's just amazing what they achieve from a filmmaking standpoint with these movies, and I can't take my eyes off the screen when the action ramps up in these extraction movies, and I'm just so blown away by them. I mean, there's not incredible acting, there's not incredible writing, but the action is as good as it gets, in my opinion. I think I kind of prefer the action in these movies over like John Wick. John Wick is much more traditional, where you have like the choreographed fighting, gunfighting, and hand-to-hand combat. It's really impressive. It's awesome, and I like those John Wick movies. Borderline love them, but the extraction movies take the choreography and make it part of the filmmaking. Like the choreography is like the camera work becomes part of the choreography, and it's so evident when you watch the movie. It's so impressive, and I'm just blown away by it every time I watch these movies. So I don't have much else to say about them. Like I said, the acting isn't incredible, the writing isn't incredible. It's nothing to hang your hat on when it comes to that stuff, but just you cannot look away from the action. It's just so incredible, and I really hope they make a third one. It's an incredible series of movies. So yeah, my number 7, Extraction 2.
That's interesting. I haven't seen either of those movies, but
me neither.
Yeah, I'm curious about them now. Yeah, for sure.
They're written by the Russo brothers.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Nice. Yep. My number 7 is the most fun I had with an action movie this year. It is something that Mike has already talked about, John Wick Chapter 4. And I did a review of it on Patreon in a Patreon potpourri episode. At the end of the year, I do Patreon potpourri where I do award season viewing. reviews and everything. So John Wick Chapter 4 is kind of interesting to me because I didn't watch it. I watched it kind of late in the game because it was getting some traction in the IFGA like nominations list and everything. And I didn't watch it. I held off on watching it specifically because I'm weird and like I still have not seen 2 or 3. I have not seen John Wick 2 or 3. Yeah. So I saw the first John Wick in like 2015 or maybe 2014, and then I haven't seen a single John Wick movie since then. And so I watched John Wick Chapter 4, knowing that I couldn't catch up on 2 and 3 because I mean that would be 2 movies that would have 2 less movies I would have watched for awards consideration had I watched those in preparation for John Wick Chapter 4. So fortunately, you don't really need to know much about anything in it. But my God, John Wick Chapter 4 is a 2-hour and 49-minute wall-to-wall action movie that it is astonishing to me how it's able to just keep that momentum for almost 3 hours. And I talked about it in the IFJ wrap-up episode that we did at the end of the year with Andy. That basically John Wick Chapter 4 does a thing where it's 2 hours of wall-to-wall action, and then it introduces the kind of final thing that's about to happen, and it introduces it as like this, like it's like I'm thinking like, okay, we just had 2 hours of just wall-to-wall amazing action, choreography, stunts, all of that. Now we're going to have this subdued finale where it's going to be like a Pistols at Dawn thing. And then the movie goes even harder with the action for the last 45 minutes. And I'm like, it's amazing. Like you Mike mentioned the cars and the motorcycles and stuff. There's a scene in the movie that's in the trailer where it's around like the big circle thing and wherever they're at. Is that Rome? I don't know. But or Paris. I don't know. It's not America.
Paris.
So Paris. There we go. But where they're going around the big thing, and 2 people get just hit by a car, and as they're in the air, John Wick kills them with gunshots. And I'm just like, what the, that is amazing. Just that is incredible. And there's just something to the gun fu thing where I will never get tired of seeing John Wick do a close combat gunshot kill shot. It's so weird because you don't see that in a lot of action movies where it's just it's a lot of gunfight. This is close quarter combat stuff. Also, Donnie Yen was amazing.
Yeah,
just
so good.
So good. That whole fight scene in the museum or wherever it was where John Wick has the nunchucks. I'm I want to this movie is amazing. I just want to hug this movie. Absolutely fantastic. I loved it. John Wick Chapter 4. It's my number 7. And I do want to say that Chad Stahelski, who is the director, he also, Tiny, was Keanu Reeves' stunt double for many years. So he comes from a stunt background. But he is attached to adapt the PlayStation game Ghost of Tsushima. And I hope that it happens. I hope that it gets off. I hope I want this movie to happen with him at the helm because it would be incredible because I love that game. So that's my number 7. It is John Wick Chapter 4. I adored it. It's phenomenal. Yep. And the Dragon's Breath stuff is jaw-dropping, amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I much preferred Chapter 3. I thought it was better. There's I think it's either 2 or 3. I think it's 3 where he fights the 2 guys from Raid 2 at the same time.
Interesting.
And it's 15 minutes nonstop.
Wow.
Yeah, I preferred 3 myself, but yeah, 4. I mean, definitely nothing to be upset about in Chapter 4. Yeah.
It's such a bummer to me that Mission Impossible kind of just didn't have an effect on me at all.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That was a bummer.
Yep.
Yeah. By the way, the guys who kind of created that style of gunfighting, Terran Tactical, they have their own YouTube channel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're out in, I want to say like out west somewhere, California, or Utah, something like that. I can't remember, but yeah.
Interesting.
If you want, you can go out there. They'll train you.
Okay. Yeah. If they're in Utah, Robert, if you're listening, I'll crash on your couch and I'll go fire some guns. Yeah, so that's my number 7, John Wick Chapter 4. Mike, do you want to bring us into your number 6?
Yeah, my number 6 is The Iron Claw, which is the last movie I saw on this list. And actually, I saw it in January, but it counts because it's a 2023 movie.
And we give us that buffer.
Yeah, exactly. And what I loved so much about The Iron Claw, well, I loved a lot about The Iron Claw. I think the way that it films professional wrestling in a loving way was really interesting and beautiful to watch. The 70s period style was really cool. I think the physicality of the actors, especially Zac Efron, was incredible. I mean, he looked like a professional wrestler. It was wild what he was able to accomplish, and really his performance in the movie I thought was excellent. But what worked so well for me in The Iron Claw was this journey of like the toxic male trope or the trope of toxic masculinity, and how the movie itself kind of plays with that idea. So there's almost two themes happening at the same time, or two halves of the movie play on this theme of masculinity. On one side, it is this very toxic masculine father forcing his kids to do this very masculine sport in a very masculine way. We don't cry, we don't dwell, take off your sunglasses, people are going to see your eyes. We're not going to be upset about this tragedy that has befallen us. But then on the other half, it's this like real celebration of male bonding and brotherhood that is like, I think you can have both. And I think so many attempts at shining a light on toxic masculinity, which is a good thing to show the negative effects of toxic masculinity. So much of those movies and stories are like all or nothing, where like men are toxic, or pro wrestlers are toxic, or fathers are all toxic, and it's this chain of toxic masculinity. And the Von Erich brothers, it was not a chain of this toxic masculinity. The tragedies that happened to them were really like this. They were star-crossed. It was really this sad twists of fate. Maybe some of the deaths could have been avoided and handled differently had the foundation of that toxicity that their father instilled upon them not been laid in the beginning. But to see their bond as brothers and their celebration for one another was really a heartwarming experience in the first half of the movie. It's kind of split in two. Like, the first half of the movie is this positive build and their growth, and then there's the wedding scene where they get married and they do this like family dance that I thought was so beautiful. There's a younger brother who doesn't necessarily want to be a wrestler, and he wants to be a musician, and he has a show one night and the parents say, no, you can't go. And then cut to later on, the brothers sneak out of the house and go, and they watch him, and they're all celebrating each other. And then when tragedy strikes this family, and I won't spoil it, but it is a true story. You can basically Google it right away. It's incredibly tragic. And one of the complaints about the movie, I think, is that it doesn't linger on these tragedies long enough. But I think that's intentional. I think the idea is that when the father says, we're not going to dwell on this, we're going to keep going, the movie then also does the same until it kind of comes to a head at the end with I don't want to rank the deaths, but probably this culminating death. And then there's this final scene that I'll hesitate to call it a redemption, but what it does is it kind of completes that circle of this brotherly love that you see in the beginning of the movie, that one of the surviving Von Erichs is then maybe challenging that cycle of toxic masculinity further. And it's such a beautiful ending. And it's a full arc for a character, and it challenges, it like portrays toxic masculinity and doesn't let it off the hook. It's a real thing, but it also says dudes can be awesome too, right? Like brothers can be bros at the same time. And I just thought it was beautiful.
That's really interesting. The movie, I didn't connect with it that much, but
I noticed.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah. But that's a really good points you made and everything. One of my issues, and this isn't I'm not gonna sit here and critique your sixth favorite movie, but one of the things that I feel like it didn't do quite as well is in basically giving Fritz, the father, it kind of didn't really give him necessarily a good comeuppance for me. Like it wasn't something that it kind of felt like it held back on demonizing him because of his actions. And that kind of, I don't know. And then I will say, like, Zac Efron gives an incredible performance. And like that last line that he says is like, it wrecked me. It wrecked me.
The line of the year.
Yeah.
If there was such a thing.
Oh yeah.
That was one of my favorite scenes of the entire year.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, really good. So the movie itself didn't really, connect with me, but I definitely see the merit in it for sure.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Tiny, any thoughts on that, or what's your number 6?
I can't wait to see Iron Claw.
Yeah, you'll love it for sure.
Missed it. Yeah, I'm sure I will. Yeah. So let's see. That was your okay. So my number 6 is Naiad, which is also on Netflix. Yes. I don't have a ton to say about the movie. For me, it made the list because of the 2 performances from Jodie Foster and Annette Bening. Yeah. And not just their performances individually, but their performances together, because it's a sports cliche to sit there and talk about how you have an individual sport where an individual is competing against other individuals or the elements or whatever. And they always talk about how, like, oh, this isn't just an individual sport. This takes team, and it focuses on that. And it's a cliche, but I feel like this movie captured it incredibly well. Most notably through the relationship between those 2 characters. And talk about perfect actresses to play those roles. Just incredible. And it was also demonstrated through some of the other characters as well. Risa Fant's character was really great as well. His relationship to the whole, all these multiple attempts at trying to achieve this thing was just incredible, and his ability to keep showing up, year after year for them to try to do this thing. That tension and that drive from those characters, I was so drawn to it, and I do give the movie credit as well, because it's, like I said, it tends to be a bit of a cliche. Someone doing something extreme like this is not a new idea for a movie, but it's still incredible. It's true story. It's incredible to see someone reach out and extend the limits of human ability, and Naiad for sure did that. I mean, she spent 70 hours in the ocean. That's just unbelievable. I cannot imagine spending more than an hour in the ocean. It's just incredible what she achieved, and again, that for me, it was the relationship between the 2 of them that was just so incredible, and I hope they both get Oscar nominations for it. So number 6 for me, Naiad.
Nice. Yeah, they were both fantastic in that movie. And it's interesting, the directors of it's their first narrative feature. They previously directed among other things, Free Solo, about the guy who climbed El Capitan without any.
Yeah.
So like they are very, very aware of how to make like extreme physical things come to life. So I think that translated well for their first, narrative feature.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep. So my number 6 is Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, a movie in which I did an immediate reaction recording on Patreon on July 19th. I also wrote a review, and we reviewed it on episode 395 of the podcast. Me and Tiny did, which also, just as an asterisk here, that is by far the biggest episode of the year in terms of downloads. Like Barbenheimer was a thing. Like it was big, which let me actually just briefly talk about that. The phenomenon of Barbenheimer, like it was a fun, like meme thing, but like I felt so like uplifted as a movie fan to like go to the theater and see people lining up dressed as Barbie, like dressed in pink, and like having this like pop culture phenomenon of these two movies that are in some strange ways a little similar, but also like these two big tentpole releases that on the surface are very, very like opposite of each other. And to see that catch the attention of the internet and pop culture and have that be such a success at the box office is so heartwarming to me as someone who, like, I had anxiety in 2020 when specifically Mike, when theaters shut down. I vividly remember you saying in our chat, saying that you thought at the time that we were maybe seeing the death of movie theaters. And like,
yeah, I remember that.
And like, yeah, that was a possibility. Maybe continues to be a possibility. Let's see what happens in the future. But like it's just so nice that in 2020 I had those concerns and I had that anxiety, and then here in 2023, Greta Gerwig, Christopher Nolan, and Taylor Swift also like just dominated like the movie going experience, and I'm just so pleased with that. But to talk about Oppenheimer as a movie, I'm someone who has been hot and cold on Christopher Nolan in the last like 10 years basically. I didn't really care for Interstellar. I also didn't really care for Tenet. But the movies I do like of his are some of my favorite movies of all time. So it's a very weird kind of relationship I have with Christopher Nolan movies. But Oppenheimer, I think, is such a massive step forward for him. It still has all the trademarks of Christopher Nolan. Like, one of the big sticking points I had with it, or one of the light criticisms I had of it, is that the end of the movie, as impactful and powerful and successful as it is as an ending to a movie, it is like the template that he has had for the end of most of his big movies. Like, it's just like the bare bones skeleton of it is like, okay, let's have this big money shot scene where characters say a couple of like very profound lines, and then we'll have the title screen come up, and then, you know, we'll have Hans Zimmer, or this time around Ludwig Göransson, score to bring us out of the movie. But like, watching it again, even like those like little misgivings I had, that plus I felt like my memory of the movie in between the first viewing and the second viewing, I felt like Florence Pugh's character kind of fell victim to a lot of the issues that Christopher Nolan has had with writing women characters. But as a biopic and as a movie that tells a story about, you know, what humanity is capable of, what like this American Prometheus was doing and created, and like the fear that instills on the possible destruction of the human race, is just magnificent. It is some of the best it's some of the best Christopher Nolan like story structure and storytelling that I've seen him do in years, and it's something I'm elated about because I'm someone who I've not really taken to some of his more recent work. So it's really great to just be kind of blown away by it. And it's fantastic. Oppenheimer, my number 6.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll be talking about it later.
Nice. Mike, do you want to go ahead and get us into our top 5s?
Top half. Here we go. So my number 5 is Barbie, and I'm going to try not to say too much because Matt, I know you're going to talk about Barbie, and I think we shared a lot of the same feelings about Barbie. But I think what delighted me so much about Barbie is the surprise of it, right? Like, I had an idea of what this movie was going. Well, there was a whole group of people who had an idea what this movie was going to be going in. I just wanted it to be more of a Barbie movie, whatever. But I had this idea of the meta humor where it's the doll who goes into the real world. And so there was a little bit in kind of the beginning of the second act where she goes to Mattel and she's with talking with Will Ferrell that is like the weakest part of the movie for me. And there was a moment where I was like, oh man, people love this movie, and this scene is like exactly what I thought it was going to be. It's kind of like this meta thing that's a little funny but not super hilarious, and like we've seen this before. And then she goes back to the Barbie world and the movie goes up a whole other notch where it's not this meta commentary on the real world and real world expectations, and it's not sexism, and it's not about the patriarchy, but it's about identity, and it's about Barbie finding her identity when her entire story has been scripted, and she goes into the real world and she has a different identity, and then she comes back and has to reclaim her identity from Ken, who is also discovering his identity. And there's not this you mentioned a comeuppance moment in the Iron Claw. Like nobody gets comeuppance in Barbie. It's just this understanding of different identities. One of my favorite lines of the year is when he asks Barbie if he wants to go back to the beach and he can play guitar at you.
Yes.
And I have used that line, play guitar at you, so many times since I've seen it, because I think that is so, gosh, I've never heard it said that way, that like that male insistence upon greatness. Like, you're gonna love that I'll play guitar. I just love calling that out. I think that that's so great. And that line, so many laugh out loud moments, like the whole I'm Just Ken dance scene. Ryan Gosling is just one of the greatest things that's ever happened. So is this movie, number 5, Barbie.
Yeah, well said. And I'll talk about it later. Yeah. So good.
Yeah, me too.
Nice.
Awesome.
Tiny, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Nice.
I chose it because I know you talked about it earlier, Matt. I totally echo what you said. I think I really liked the creative choices of the movie as well, in addition to what you said, because I think it would have been easy to focus on the lost love aspect between Star-Lord and Gamora, and of course it's addressed. It has to be addressed. But I love that they shifted focus to Rocket so much.
Yeah.
Because he's the right-hand man. He is the pseudo leader of the group. It's a joke that's played at since the first movie came out. Who's the actual captain of the ship? Who's really leading the crew? And so we didn't have a clear idea of his backstory, and he's so pivotal to the group. You could make the argument that he's not particularly skilled as far as what the group does, right? He kind of gets lucky a lot, and like he can shoot a gun, and like that's about it. Like all these other, like Gamora is super strong and powerful, and Star-Lord is he can fly around and do all this stuff, and he like Rocket's a little raccoon who can shoot a gun, and that's about it. And but he's so important to the group for other reasons, and because he's smart, he knows how to figure things out. He's a great leader and all those things, and I've always loved that about his character. And so for him to get a backstory is just perfect. It's a perfect way to end a trilogy, and it's a perfect way to cut the tension of that exists in the group and bring everything back, rip all these characters back down to reality. It was just a great way to lead, a great direction to lead the movie in. And also to echo what you said, Matt, the emotional journey of the movie is incredibly powerful. I mean, we were talking about this being a cat podcast, and Matt or Mike just got cats and everything, and you talked about how you're not like big on other people's pets and stuff like that, which I totally understand. That's fine. But I'm the opposite. Like I don't necessarily consider myself an animal person, but like I've really changed in that regard. Like I truly adore my dog, and like he's a part of my family, and like he's amazing, and I love dogs in general and other animals. And so to see the animals in this movie going through what they go through was like some of the hardest emotional stuff I had to go through all year. I mean, it was so difficult, and I think tapped into that notion that animal people have without being like overt or without being cheesy or like it wasn't like Marley and Me, you know what I mean? Where it's like, that the goal of this movie is to grab animal people and make them cry, right? That's what Marley and Me was, but I don't think that's what this movie was. It was just, it just felt grounded. That backstory felt grounded to me, and it was just so rewarding and tragic at the same time. And I also appreciated the conclusions of the movie. I'm not going to spoil anything, but again, you could have had this whole love story aspect that would have fallen into cliches and been maybe not been bad, but been predictable. And they didn't go that route. And I respect the movie for that. So, so many reasons to love Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm going to miss them a lot because they were just, it was so unexpected from the get-go. I remember when the movie was announced, the first one, I was like, what the hell is this? What's like, there's a tree that talks, like, and a raccoon. What's going to go on with this? Is weird. And it turned out to be a lot of people's favorite characters and favorite part of the MCU.
Yeah.
And for good reason. I love the send off that James Gunn and everybody gave them. It was a great movie. So yeah, number 5 for me, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Mike, is Guardians on your list anywhere?
It is not. I thought it was, I don't know. I don't even feel bad that it's not on my list. I don't know what it is about the Guardians movie that they're just like, they're great. I think that they're upper tier MCU. But man, I just forget about them. I don't know. I need to do a little more of a deep dive. I don't feel like I'm explaining myself well enough, but there's just something that holds me back from absolutely loving Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Cause I agree that they're great, but it was, I don't know. I had it below Thanksgiving on my honorable mentions.
That's interesting because it seems like they're the most disconnected of the MCU, and even though they tie together in Infinity War and Endgame and all that, but they do seem like they're a more clear vision from a filmmaker than the other ones. And as I said before, the MCU just took such a tailspin nosedive this year for me.
Right.
So I don't know. But I will go ahead and bring my number 5 to the table. And I will grip the severed hand and Talk to Me is my number 5.
Yes.
Yes. I did an immediate reaction on Patreon on August 19th. Talk to Me is such, for all the things that Mike said, wholeheartedly agree. The central concept of this like party game, this party thing, is so unique and interesting in the way that it just like, it uses that as this launching off point for like a possession story or it's a unique spin on like a seance. like theme of a horror movie. And like the grief stuff is like, yeah, I do understand, like the grief and horror is like, they go hand in hand, no pun intended. But they go hand in hand, and it's a very popular thing to explore in the horror genre. And I think that it explores it incredibly well in Talk to Me. And like I mentioned, that Leave the World Behind has a great punchline of an ending. Talk to Me's ending was like one of those things where,
yes,
like I mentioned in the theater viewings section of the episode that I was squirming in my seat. I was so invested in this movie. It was such an interesting thing because, first of all, the opening of the movie is staggeringly good. Like it brings you into it. It is shocking. It's awesome. And then throughout, from the beginning to right up to the end, I'm sitting there like I want to hide my eyes from the screen because I'm scared of like what's to come, and like the violence and like the idea of people not being able to control what's in their body is very, very compelling as a horror vessel. But when it gets to the ending, I like, after spending an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes just squirming in my seat, being like having my heart rate just pulsating like very fast, rapidly. Like when I caught on to what they were leading toward with the ending, I had the biggest shit-eating grin on my face. And I thought it was a perfect ending. It was so perfect. So perfect. I don't want them to make Talk to Me 2, but
same. Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah.
But
yeah,
I also want, but I also want to see more of this, this and everything. So
from that team of filmmakers and that angle, I do want more of that. But I do, that story is done, and it felt done
100%
in such an excellent way. Gosh, I don't want to reveal too much about it because there's an advertisement for Talk to Me. Go see it. But how the ending kind of pays off the grief and the coping that I kind of talked about is it's perfect. It's intense.
It's such a chef's kiss of an ending. I loved it. Yep.
Yeah, one of my favorite endings of the year for sure.
Nice.
And I really should have had it as an honorable mention on my list. I liked the movie a lot. And I think you're talking about a sequel, or how it does not need a sequel. I fully agree. Yeah. I think a prequel might be kind of cool, like the origin of the hand.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
That could possibly work,
Or something just completely disconnected from the story in the first one. Because I think that the lore that they have is very strong. Like there's something to that. And like... like I saw online somewhere that like I think A24 is selling like merchandise of the hand, and I'm like, that's a no-brainer. That's perfect.
Nice.
It's so good. So that's my number 5, Talk to Me. And Mike, would you like to talk to me about your number 4?
Sure. You give me a little bit of air time over here to talk about my number 4.
Nice.
So this is it's kind of my dark horse this year. One where if you want to kind of give me a bit of a side eye for this one, I'll allow it. But Air, the Nike Michael Jordan Air Jordan shoe movie by Ben Affleck. I had so much fun with this movie. It is an ultimate dad movie. Like I will fess up to, like, if I had seen this movie before I had kids, I don't know that it would have had the same effect. But there is something that happens when you have a kid that you just like a different kind of movies. It's just like ultimate dad movie. I love seeing Matt and Ben reuniting on screen. I mean, I know we got that in The Last Duel last year, which was also a great
sort
movie.
of, really.
By the way, go see The Last Duel.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
That movie is seek it out. The most underseen movie of the last couple of years. Amazing movie. Anyway, whatever. So Ben Affleck is like hit after hit after hit directing. Jason Bateman is just Jason Bateman.
Mm-hmm.
I think Chris Tucker's doing great work. Viola Davis as Michael Jordan's mom is amazing. Everybody in the movie is so great. And I think it was kind of a cool touch that they never showed Michael Jordan. Like, how could you show that kind of greatness on scene? I have said multiple times on this podcast that I grew up in Chicago. The Chicago Bulls were a massive, massive, massive part of my upbringing. So the events of this movie are a little bit before my time. I don't remember the Bulls drafting Michael Jordan at all. But to kind of watch it happen and watch how they pitched him the shoe and pitched him the deal and talked about his greatness. It's a weird movie to kind of root for rich people getting richer. Like it's barely a rags to riches story. It's like a somewhat riches to more riches story. And it's not really the type of story we need in 2023. And it kind of goes against some of the other movies I loved this year. But I don't know. Everybody on screen is having so much fun. They're really giving it their all. I connected with the nostalgia of the movie. And when I think about my lists and movies I'll definitely watch again, Air is absolutely a movie I'll watch again. I loved it.
Nice. And that's available on Prime Video.
Correct.
Tiny, did you see Air?
No, and I hate to say it, but I could not be less interested in it.
I get
sorry,
that.
Mike.
I get that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But having said that, Mike, you mentioned the Bulls, Chicago Bulls. Have you watched The Last Dance? Documentary show?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Unbelievable television documentary making.
Yep.
So good.
I really need to watch that.
If I remember correctly, I think the year that it came out during our top 10, I think I mentioned like it's not a movie, but if we were doing kind of all media, it was my number one. Yeah, I loved it a lot.
So good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Didn't mean to distract that. But.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, I didn't really connect with Air all that much, but I will say that the monologue that he gives at the end, just about the impending greatness of Michael Jordan.
Greatness, yes.
That's one of my favorite scenes of the year. It's so effective. It's so good. So yeah.
I also didn't know that they fined Michael Jordan for having more than 2 colors on his shoe.
Oh yeah.
Every game, and Nike just they loved the design so much that they promised to pay the fine.
That's so awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I didn't really care that much about the movie all told, but I do think that there is something to be said. I had mentioned that I'm kind of tired of the corporate true story kind of trend that's going, I guess. But there is a certain I don't know, upbeat nature to Air that I think is commendable. It's very, like you said, it's a weird movie. It's fun. It makes stuffy boardroom talk or stuffy deal making talk. It makes it fun. Chris Messina is fantastic in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The whole cast looks like they're having fun, and
exactly.
you kind of know because they know each other.
Yeah,
and Matt and Ben being together, know that they have a history, and it really felt like, I wouldn't even call it a passion project, but it just felt like a fun project. It's kind of like when Adam Sandler's goons get together and film a vacation and have fun. This is a little more elevated than that, but not significantly more elevated than that. Like I said, if you want to come at me for putting this on my top 10, I have no defense for it, except that it's, the Venn diagram of interests. I am right smack dab in the center of what this movie had to offer.
Totally understandable. Tiny, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is Barbie.
Nice.
And of course, I will echo what Mike said. I fully agree with that. But to me, it's I feel like there's so many ways for a wide audience to connect to this movie, and of course, it's quote unquote politically charged, whatever that means. But because there was such a reaction to this, of course, because feminism and masculinity, all that. Anytime you tackle those as a theme in any way, you're going to have a reaction from douchebags, and of course that happened here. But I so appreciated the male side of this movie because we don't get to see this that often. We don't get to see a vulnerable man who doesn't know who he is. We don't get to see him not succeeding, struggling so much. He's struggling so much. I feel like it was hilarious, and I appreciated it for its comedy, but I just thought it was perfect that it wasn't that he was struggling so bad and everyone else was succeeding. Like Mike was saying, everyone was struggling for their identity, and I just appreciated the fact that he was screwing up and not succeeding and struggling so much, and everybody was like, that's fine, like don't it's okay. And as a community, men need to have that attitude. We need to understand that it's okay to not, there's that's almost becoming a cliche at this point. It's okay to not be okay, and that's becoming part of our zeitgeist and our conversation. And I think Ken in this movie exemplifies that. And talk about a message that needs to be out more and that needs to be disseminated amongst our society more. And the fact that it was done so well with an iconic character, and that was my favorite part of the movie, was the whole everything to do with Ken. And I don't feel bad saying that, because I'm a guy and I have to find a way to relate to this, and that's how I related to it. Not that I necessarily have the same struggles that Ken does, but of course everything else about the movie is amazing too. The iconic speech by America Ferrera about it's impossible to be a woman. I mean, how, again, talk about a message that needs to be disseminated amongst our society, that something that we need to understand, especially as guys. We need to understand that. And there were things in that speech that I don't respect enough, or that I haven't traditionally.
Yeah, what did she say when she said something? And I might switch around, but she's like, they want us to be their mother, but not their mom. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
I was like so embarrassed. I was like, oh, I'm an idiot. I'm so stupid.
Right.
Like, it got me. It worked.
Yeah. And stuff like this has made me as a person be more aware of what people are going through. Like this movie. This movie is an example of that. I'm not saying it's the best movie to ever do it or anything, but it did a damn good job. And I love gosh, I am just terrible. I'm spacing on her name.
Margot Robbie?
Greta Gerwig.
Yes.
I think I actually prefer her version of Little Women. I think that might be her best work. But she is an incredible writer, filmmaker. She's a good actor too. So yeah, I hope she keeps making movies, and I think this was the perfect Barbie movie. There's talk about more Mattel movies coming out, and I don't know how that's going to work out, but maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Man, I think your analysis is so great and so spot on.
Yep.
That's such a great gosh, not even that you're making an argument or reacting to, but I do think we're living in like a post-feminism era where, like, when it really became hyper politically charged, it was very anti-men, and men are like, the patriarchy is ruining everything, which to some extent, that's not too far off.
Right.
They have a point.
They have a point. And I don't want to come off like I'm against that. My point is that so many movies kind of depicted men as those bumbling fools and those bad guys, and you could point to man in a movie and say, oh yeah, that their behavior is the problem. But kind of like you said, this was the year of like vulnerability in men and like offering men an opportunity to redeem some of the mistakes they've made in climbing to the top, and saying, do you see now why we feel, women, do you see now why we feel the way we feel? It's because you behave this way, and it's okay to be vulnerable. I think the Iron Claw does that. I think Ken does that. Godzilla, which we're going to talk about, is an incredibly vulnerable movie. And that's really spot on. I don't know. I like that a lot, Tiny.
Thanks, man. Well said. And yeah, I'll talk about it here soon. But yeah, very, very, very good movie. And yeah, I've watched a couple of Noah Baumbach movies recently, one of which being Greenberg, which
she's great in that.
Fantastic. And it's funny, just as a brief aside, I remember like decades ago at this point, Tiny, I remember for some reason, like when we both had, or when you had like a Netflix by mail like account before the age of streaming and everything, I remember like you lent me Greenberg on DVD that you got from Netflix, and it sat on my DVD player for I think months. And and you were so nice to not at least express how annoyed you were at that. But eventually I think I was just like, I'm never going to watch this. Okay, I'll just send it back for him.
It couldn't have been that bad because I don't remember that at all. So.
Yeah, I thought about that as I was watching it. And yeah, Greta Gerwig is just a treasure. Oh, I also watched Frances Ha, which, holy crap, incredible.
I haven't seen that one. I've heard it's great, though.
It's incredible. I will send you a DVD and you can have it on your table for months. But yeah, Barbie's great. Going into my number 4, it is The Holdovers. I did a review of it in Patreon Potpourri, episode 27 in December on Patreon for the $5 and above tiers. It was part of my award season coverage. The Holdovers just was such a magnificent exercise in creating like not even a nostalgia, but it's just an essence of 70s. It is so ingrained in the 70s like culture of the setting and in the filmmaking. It looks like a 70s movie. The choices that Alexander Payne makes, it looks like they're like one of the ones that I keep pointing out when I think about this movie is like when Paul Giamatti is looking for Dominic Sessa, and he goes to like, he opens the door to the big building he's in on campus, and he looks outside, and like there's just this like fast zoom out to show to just how like Dominic Sessa is nowhere to be found. And like there's something so like vintage about that. And something that I talked about in Patreon Potpourri and on my Letterboxd blurb was that it's so refreshing to see a filmmaker do something that is so clearly tied to potentially to nostalgia that they have, but not make it about the nostalgia. It is not like not like a J.J. Abrams thing, or it's not like a Zack Snyder shitting on Kurosawa or anything like that. It is like this. It is this aesthetic that he puts into the movie that is to tell the story. And the story...
It's about the people.
It's about the people. And it's incredible. It is incredible. The way that they bond, the 3 central characters, the way that they bond and grow together, it is so organically done. And it has some of the most just brilliant and biting dialogue I've seen all year. It is amazing. It's amazing. And I'm like... I will yield that because I know that Mike is going to bring it up.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah, but The Holdovers is amazing. It is currently streaming on Peacock. Watch it. It's so good, and incredible performances across the board. I love this movie so much.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it later too.
Nice.
Yep.
Yep.
So great.
So that's my number 4. And Mike, do you want to bring us into your number 3?
Yes, I am not going to talk about the holdovers yet. I'm going to talk about Godzilla -1.
Nice.
My number 3 movie of the year. And I saw this at the top of a lot of like year-end horror movie lists. And I guess it is a monster. I mean, it is a monster movie. And I guess horror includes monster movies. I don't know. I didn't think of it as a horror movie. But it is far and away the best action movie of the year. And I'm going to take a big swing here and say I've never felt anything bigger or more intense in a movie than the Godzilla scenes in this movie. And I don't even mean just like it's the biggest and most intense Godzilla I've ever seen in a movie. I mean like it's bigger than any Avengers movie big. When he comes out and he is doing his like flame breath and the spines on his neck like shoot up.
Yes.
I mean, it feels absolutely massive. We can talk about the story, and we can talk about the grief aspect of it, and the purpose and the guilt of war. Because I think you guys will talk about it in a little bit. So I won't talk about it too much. Except to say that the action seems so huge. Every moment, I mean, I was cackling in the theater with glee and excitement because of the action scenes. To go a little sadder with it, one of the things I loved so much about it, or found to be heavy, was that the movie is a fantasy that, gosh, I may be out of my bounds here, but the movie is a fantasy that the Japanese invented to feel a sense of a win after the loss of World War II. I think that's a lot about what this movie is, right? Like, what is the cost of war? What is the cost of loss, right? They lost World War II. The main character is defected, and so they came up with this movie where I'm sorry to spoil. It's not too much of a spoil to say where like the good guys win in the end. They win a war, and they had to come up with this fantasy where they win to, I don't know, to make sense of the real world loss that they felt in World War II. And it's really sad and also kind of incredibly powerful to watch.
I think I'm going to talk about it later, but I do think that it goes even deeper than that. I think it just harkens back to like today, earlier today, I watched the original Godzilla from 1954, one of my all-time favorite movies. And like this movie, Godzilla -1, just harkens back to that post-war Japan, just that sense of loss and that sense of not like just despair. And I think that Godzilla -1 handles that so incredible. Like the reason it's called -1 is that Japan was at 0 after World War II, and now they're at -1 with Godzilla. Exactly. And like it's so incredible. It's so incredible. I'll talk more about it, but it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yep. My number 3.
Yep. Tiny.
Nice.
Yeah.
My number 3 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Nice.
For some damn reason, I took forever to see this movie. It was available for streaming for months and months, and I just hadn't watched it. Watched it a few weeks ago, and much like the first movie, I was beyond charmed and fascinated and just into this movie all around. I am most impressed by the dramatic moments of this movie, and also the first movie. I feel like an animated movie can be dramatic, of course. It's possible. Pixar's been doing it for decades, right? But I think the way what impressed me about the dramatic moments in this movie, most notably when Miles Morales is wrestling with the idea of if he wants to reveal his identity to most notably his parents. I think the performances of the voice actors coupled with the animation, did they do motion capture for these? Do you guys know? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, it's hard to tell because the character of Miles Morales visually wrestling and physically wrestling with what he's going through is so realistic and just so like you really feel it. Like it's not. I don't know if I'm articulating it well, but like I feel like, you know, it's so grounded and so like it feels so realistic for an animated movie. That there's these dramatic pauses where he's about to tell his mom that he's Spider-Man, right? And it's like, and it's so intense, and just the way he pauses, and there's these long pauses, and he's looking at the ground or he's looking off into the distance, being like, "This is it. This is my moment. I have to tell her right now." And then he doesn't, or he, you know, he's just struggling with it so much. It feels so real, and it's like it doesn't feel like an animated movie to me. There's several moments like that throughout the movie. Gwen has moments like that. Most of the characters do, and I'm also just blown away by the world they created. I mean, it's the animation style is perfect for a multiverse, and I can't even put my thumb on it. Like I don't even know who to give credit to. I don't know what to call it, but it's just the Spider-Verse version. The Spider-Verse style animation is just the coolest thing. Like I can't get over how visually impressive it is and how perfect it is to show this universe, multiverse. You know, it's just really incredible. I can't get over how good this movie is, like, and how good the series is, because it's just so unexpected for me. I really, and again, I don't know what I was thinking putting this movie off for months and months like I did, because I knew I was going to love it, and I can't decide yet if I like it more than the first one. I'm gonna have to watch both of them again, but it's just such touching character work and such amazing animation. The voice work and performances are top notch. I'm just blown away by what they achieved with the Spider-Verse movies. I can't wait for part 3. I wasn't thrilled with the ending, but I ended up not minding it. I won't go into details, obviously, but they cannot. No one could possibly do a better job with these movies. They're just they borderline on perfect, and it's some of the best the MCU has to offer. Well, I don't even know if it's not even considered MCU. It's Marvel.
Yeah.
It's some of the best that Marvel has to offer, and it's not even in the MCU, is what I was trying to say. So yeah, if you haven't seen them yet, get off your ass and go see them. They're incredible. and this is another spectacular entry across the Spider-Verse for my number 3. Is that what we're on? 3?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well said. And I regret not having it on my list. It's on my honorable mentions.
Yeah, what are you doing, man?
I know. It kind of came down.
This and Scream 6. We've done a lot. I don't know that we've done a whole lot of convincing Matt in the past that his he should have had some other stuff on his list. This is interesting.
Yeah. Spider-Man, it came down to that or Guardians for my number 10 spot.
Wow,
but
wow.
But
Okay.
it's great. It's fantastic. So yeah.
Okay.
I should probably bring my number 3 then. My number 3 was a movie that I reviewed in episode 405 with my friend Sam. Dream Scenario. Nicolas Cage is outstanding. He plays this kind of just mediocre man who finds himself becoming literally the most recognizable and most interesting man on the planet. And the way that the movie just delves into that and uses that as a way to just explore something, not necessarily his sense of identity, but his sense of desire in wanting to be more than what he is. It's an incredible piece of work. Like it's incredible because the premise alone is interesting. It's about a man who suddenly is in the dreams of everyone, and it's how the world reacts to him popping up in their dreams. And what I find so fascinating and so interesting about it is that from the outset, like he is asking people, like he's a professor, he's asking his students, like, what am I doing in your dreams? Am I doing something interesting? Is like, what am I doing? Am I amazing or something? And like at every turn, it's monotony. It's him just being there. And I think that is such a great jumping off point for the story, because it's about this man reckoning with the idea that, you know, he's not spectacular. He's not anything, you know, unique or interesting. He's just a mediocre dude. And it's just so interesting, and it's funny and a little bit heartbreaking in several points, where it's just he's struggling to do something with this phenomenon and it's just not working. And there are plenty of statements and subtext involving like internet culture and cancel culture, all of that. But that's all secondary to me to the character arc of Nicolas Cage's character. I think it's just a phenomenal movie. And it's something that the movie does not get mired in the concept of like the dream world, or the phenomenon of him appearing in people's dreams. It's just, that's a vessel to tell the story about him. And it's phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. I wish I would have seen it again before recording, but it's fantastic. Dream Scenario, my number 3.
Yeah, I watched that one. It didn't make my top 10. It felt like a perfect Wednesday night movie to watch with my wife. Kind of weird, kind of quirky, works on a deeper level. I'll probably watch it again. I liked it a lot. I really liked Nick Cage's performance, but did make my top 10.
Nice.
I didn't get a chance to, but I really want to see it.
Nice. Yeah, I think you'd enjoy it. Yep.
Yeah.
Top 2, Mike. Do you want to hit us with your number 2?
Yeah. So the week or so after I saw my number 2, it slid into my number 1 spot for a little while. And then I rewatched my number 1, which was the former number 1, and I put it back in my number 1. But my current number 2 is The Holdovers.
Nice.
And if I could be bombastic again, Divine Joy Randolph probably gives my favorite performance of the year. There is a moment in the middle of the movie when she says to Paul Giamatti's character that everybody should be with their people on Christmas. And I think that is the central theme of the movie, which I believe is about 3 lonely characters trying to find their people in life in different ways, right?
Yeah.
What I think is so cool about it being a Christmas movie is it's like the perfect kind of backdrop for that type of a rumination. So not only does it hit the nostalgia that you're talking about, but it doesn't focus on that nostalgia, because I think Christmas is a nostalgic time for everybody in good ways and bad ways. Like every year at Christmas, you're thinking about Christmases past.
Yeah.
And so the holiday itself is kind of a bit of a Rorschach in that it can be the most wonderful time of the year for some people, but then also the most stressful or frustrating or downright lonely. And not that the movie is about like the spirit of Christmas or anything like that. It's hardly even about Christmas, but it is about that type of, it's asking us to be nostalgic for our own Christmases in the past, whereas the characters themselves are also nostalgic. Maybe not for their own Christmases, but they're thinking of different times because the time they're in is pretty miserable. And they just go to a Christmas Eve party and talk and have moments and drama. And I was just like, man, there are not enough period movies where people are just sitting and talking to each other on Christmas Eve in interesting ways. I don't know. So many of the movies on this list have incredibly rich and complex and timely themes, or incredible filmmaking and action, or over the top whatever. This is like the anti-Oppenheimer. And I just thought it was a powerful movie, and it's a movie I've thought about a lot since I saw it, and might make its way in my annual Christmas watches.
Nice. Yeah, when you said that Christmas is the time where people think about Christmas's past and everything, I wanted to say, yeah, and sometimes these asshole ghosts show up and show like Christmas past, present, and future. Yeah. But yeah, it just, it's going to be on rotation for me to rewatch. Yeah, it's so good. So good.
Same here.
Yep. Tiny, you're number 2.
It's poignant that Mike said Holdovers is the anti-Oppenheimer, because Oppenheimer's my number 2 movie of the year.
Nice.
Oh, that's great.
So wait, do we have has anybody had an overlap at all?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think we have had any movie in the same spot.
Nope.
At all.
We have not. That is...
Which might be a first.
Maybe.
Cool. Yeah,
I feel like that has to be a first. That's wild.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, crazy.
Amazing.
So yeah, you guys have already talked about Oppenheimer. I won't beat it to death. We all know how great it was. For me, I think the opposite, not necessarily the opposite of Matt, but antithesis of Matt. I still hold Christopher Nolan in such high regard. I feel like he's, his movies over the last decade or so have not fallen off for me. I think they're fantastic. I love them all. He's one of my top 5 favorite filmmakers. I am such a big fan of his. But I do agree with Matt that it was a new step for him. I fully agree with that. I think this movie, and I said it when the movie was over, I think I was talking to Matt and our friend Ben in the viewing, like when we were in the lobby after the movie. I think this is Christopher Nolan's strongest script he's ever written. I was blown away by it. This is also, you also have to bring up the runtime of the movie. I think that's notable. Killers of the Flower Moon was a little bit longer, and 3.5 hours. Oppenheimer was just about 3 hours. Killers of the Flower Moon was too long. I felt the time really, really wore me down. Oppenheimer, it could have been longer. I was just enamored by the fact that 180 minutes are fully utilized. Every single minute of that movie is poignant, and it matters, and it affects all the other minutes. And every piece of this movie was important, and nothing could have been taken out. It did not feel like 3 hours at all to me. I was just on the edge of my seat the whole time, and it was so thrilling for a non-thriller movie. I was just blown away by the ability of the script and the structure of the movie to be so powerful at every moment. And I've maybe never seen a movie like that before. It did not drag anywhere, and that completely surprised me and blew me away. I was expecting it to be. I was very intimidated by the 3-hour runtime, especially on a Tuesday night. I was like, God damn it, this is rough. I'm going to be getting to bed after midnight on a Tuesday night. That's rough. But I could not have been more happy leaving the movie theater. And of course, everyone's talking about Cillian Murphy. I think the three of us. I don't want to speak for you guys, but we've been big fans for decades.
Oh yeah,
he's been on my radar forever. And that's the thing. Like, I think one of his most famous roles is probably Peaky Blinders, and I've never even watched all that.
I haven't either.
It's like what he's known for most, and it's funny because I haven't even really seen it, and it's kind of funny. So I'm glad to see that he is truly blowing up right now. He has a good chance of winning an Oscar, and that's all incredible. I loved all the other actors. Robert Downey Jr., it's so great to see him show his age a little bit. You know, he's Iron Man, and that's how we all look at him, and we should. And I love him for that, and I will always see him as Iron Man. But this character is such a departure from that. I think the casting of him in that role was borderline brilliant, because they just rip that image of Iron Man down, and we're all like, okay, this is a different Robert Downey Jr. here, and to see him in that role, he was phenomenal. Again, I hope he gets nominated for an Oscar. I loved him in that role. And I think Matt had a good point about the female characters, especially Florence Pugh's character. I think, yeah, clearly was a pivotal person for Robert Oppenheimer in real life. But just the way the character was used, I feel like was a little clumsy at times, maybe. And I wasn't sure what influence she had, and it wasn't always super clear. Maybe that was the point of the character. But yeah, I think that could have been done slightly better. That's one of my only criticisms. And yeah, sorry, I'm kind of dragging on here, but the last point I'll make are the visuals were great. You know, they didn't use like a second of CGI in this whole movie, which is incredible. But for me, the technical standout was the sound. You know, we had the pleasure of seeing this in a true IMAX theater, and the sound was earth-shattering. I mean, it was incredible. Like, especially the bomb scenes were amazing, but there was you know, kind of after the successful test, I want to say, where they're all celebrating in that gym scene.
Oh my God, yes.
Like a whole second explosion. It's arguably more poignant moment than the actual bomb test was that. And I was just like, was unexpected, and such an incredible fully technical journey of a scene to go through. You know, really impressive. The movie all around was impressive. I loved it. I think it's going to be one of those movies that's going to be on a lot of you know, top 100 of all time lists. I think it's going to make that. I think this movie's going to stand the test of time, and it's going to be something that people talk about in film classes and stuff like that. Not necessarily because it's better than other movies, but because it's such an achievement. So yeah, number 2 for me is Oppenheimer.
Nice. Yeah. Well said. It's amazing. And that gymnasium scene, just, incredible.
Very cool.
All right. And so I am going to drop my number 2 on you guys. We have talked about it already. I did an immediate reaction on Patreon, and I reviewed it in episode 396 of the Obsessive Viewer with my friend Andy. It's Barbie. I loved this movie. Greta Gerwig takes that vision of like she takes what could have been just an IP, the Barbie IP, into that meta humor. Kind of like it evoked to me a lot of like the Brady Bunch movie, which I love. I adore the Brady Bunch movie. But it has such strong statements in the movie, and it makes those statements so clearly, and it is so beautifully done and beautifully demonstrated. There's that scene where she's on the bench and she looks at the woman and says that she's beautiful, and she just says, "I know." And it's like that beautiful, like commiserating about a shared experience that these two are having as women. And it's a beautiful sentiment. And I really appreciated also the way that, like we talked about before, the way that it goes into like the male identity as well, and that toxic masculinity, poking fun at it. And it's so much fun. Mike, you said that, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said that Ryan Gosling is like a treasure, and like,
yeah, he's the best thing that ever happened.
Yes, every interview I've seen of him, like for this movie, is just like he's Ken personified. He just seems like so good, and he is brilliant in this movie, as is Margot Robbie. And like, there's a scene where she's talking to Rhea Perlman at the end of the movie, and it's where Billie Eilish's song comes in. And like, each time I've watched this movie, it's like gotten me very choked up and teary-eyed, because it's such an interesting just movie where it's about self-actualization, self-realization, about like where you are, who you are, your identity in the grand scheme of things, in a culture that has preconceived ideas of what you should be. And it's such a powerful statement to have this journey for both Barbie and Ken to realize like their potential as people, as beings, rather than what they should be or could be. And I just love everything about it. It's amazing. It was my number one for a long time. But it's fantastic. I absolutely loved Barbie.
Awesome.
Nice.
Love it.
Very cool.
Yep. Or in another word, it was sublime. As Ken says. But anyway, I loved it. I loved it so much. So that's my number 2. And shall we do it? Shall we share our number 1 movies?
Movies of the year.
Yes. Mike, will you do us the honor of sharing with us your number 1 movie of 2023?
I would love to. My favorite movie of 2023 was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Oh, nice. Big surprise. The Spider-Man movie is my favorite movie of the year. I love comic books. I love Spider-Man. I love comic book movies. But man, these Across the Spider-Verse, these Spider-Verse movies are just doing something else entirely. The first one, and especially this one, are unmatched in the scope, ambition, creativity, originality, and fan service. It's like all you want from good animated comic book movies in one melting pot together in an amazing experience, a fun time, a feast for the eyes, action-packed, entertaining, and imaginative to watch. It's like you've never seen an animated movie like this. And it's just such a fun thrill ride to watch the entire way through. If you're a fan of Spider-Man, you'll love it. If you're a fan of Spider-Man lore, there's an Easter basket full of eggs that will keep you entertained all the way to Easter. Cracking open these eggs. It's just everything about it works so well, and it's so much fun to watch that I think even if it didn't have some of the things I'm about to talk about, it would still be in a top 10 of the year just for sheer entertainment value, spectacle, and imagination and originality. But what I love so much about this movie and why it's clearly my number 1 is how timely it is in terms of the American experience and the immigrant and children of immigrant and minority experience in America. So the Spider-Verse movies, and especially this one, I think is about storytelling and especially minorities' stories, or at least the stories that are written about them and written for them. So I think a common criticism of this movie is that it's like part 1 of 2 and it doesn't really end. And for Miles, I completely agree. It is half of his story. In fact, the movie ends at like his inciting incident. Mm-hmm. What I think is cool is that Gwen has an arc in this story, and it opens with her story. So it's like this movie, you get an entire story arc of a main character. It's just not Miles, it's Gwen. And we can talk about the politics of that it doesn't actually focus on our Black and Puerto Rican main character. But I still think it's interesting that we get a character resolution in the movie, even if it's not the character front and center on the poster. But when we're talking about Miles, the story is about how people have been writing his story his entire life, both in his real life and as a superhero. And this is not me. This is not subtext. Like I'm not teasing out the subtext of some political agenda I'm trying to force. It's literally text in the movie where he's sitting in the counselor's office and she's making up this story of their lives, right? That they come from poverty and they had to cross the border. And his mom is like, I was born here. And the dad is like, we own a really nice house and I'm a captain. Like, you are making up this story even in your seemingly altruistic and positive, helpful way. you are actually hurting the stories that we're trying to write by forcing your idea of what my story should be upon me. So he takes that frustration in his real life into the multiverse. He battles some bad guys. He faces up against Miguel O'Hara, who has his own story, and realizes that there are stories in our lives. There are destinies that we're supposed to follow. And if we don't follow those destinies, the entire universe will be destroyed. And Miguel says to Miles, you have to listen to me or you're going to destroy everything. And he literally says, nah, I'm going to do my own thing. And saying that out loud right now gives me chills. Like watching him take ownership. That's not the climax of this movie. It's the inciting incident of his story, right? It's like he's making this new journey for himself where he's like an anomaly that shouldn't exist. You like being half black, half Puerto Rican. The counselor thinks he's this anomaly that shouldn't exist or needs to be dealt with. And so by him taking back his story and saying, no, I'm going to do my own thing, he's like paying off what happens early on in the movie. And it's minorities saying enough is enough. Stop telling our story. We're going to write our own stories. Here we go. And so he has to face down his own story and essentially write the ending to his story. What's interesting is that the obstacle in the next movie has their own story. I don't want to say too much, but so I think you get both with this movie. I think you get the entertainment value of a fun blockbuster popcorn and candy movie with lots of colors and action and flashing lights and brilliant animation, but you also get a super timely story about Miles Morales that continues the theme of anybody can be a hero that the first one established. And so that's why I put it over The Holdovers as my favorite movie of the year. I just think it's more important right now.
Yeah, I totally get that. Damn it, I should put it on my list.
Oh no.
Yeah, I really need to watch it again.
Mike, you're so good at that. You're so good at talking us into regretting the stuff on our list.
Oh, no.
Every year, I feel like that happens to me. Mike,
man.
Mike has one of his spiels, and I'm like, damn it.
I know. I get on my soapbox. I appreciate that. I guess I'm just good at convincing people. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like what you like. I mean, whatever you liked is what you like. I think that's a more pure version of your list, not what you would come up with because I rant or whatever. So I mean, I'll take that as a compliment. But your lists are just
I meant
as
it as
valid.
one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I meant it as one for sure.
Thanks, man.
That's kind of one of the reasons why I've always been a little resistant to the idea of like revisiting past top 10s because like there are some like terrible things on mine. Like 2013, I had some that like I have not given a second thought to.
Right.
But I like the idea of a top 10 list being a timestamp of the time that we're in. And I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, well said. Tiny, what is your number one movie of 2023?
My number one movie is one you guys have already talked about. It's The Holdovers.
Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Good.
God, I just love the movie. And I think it's for multiple reasons. I loved what, I can't remember which one of you said it, but it was, you were talking about how the movie's not about nostalgia. Was that you, Mike, who said that?
I think Matt
I
said
think we
it,
both
but I
kind of said it.
but I kind of doubled down on it.
Okay, I hadn't even thought about that when I watched the movie. I was like, "You're right." You know, our culture right now, especially online culture, is so much about nostalgia and BuzzFeed nostalgia. Like, oh, you remember this stuff from 1994? Like, and I kind of like that stuff. It's kind of fun to revisit, but it's not very. It doesn't have any legs. It's not something you think about the next day. It's very flash in the pan, and this movie's not about nostalgia at all. It just happens to be set in 1970. I think it's a good time to set the movie because I feel like the backdrop of the Vietnam War is it leaves a lot of stuff unsaid that doesn't need to be said, I think. And that's a powerful tool as narratively, it's a powerful tool. So I think that's a good idea to set it in 1970. But you know, like you guys said, it's about the people. These three characters that cover such a wide breadth of human experience. I think it's early on in the first act or two, it's so fun to see Paul Giamatti and Dominic Sessa have this seemingly silly argument against the experience of Divine Joy Randolph's character. She's like, you know, she has to be thinking in her head, what the hell are you guys arguing about? Why are you so upset? Like, I lost my son to a bullshit war, and you guys are mad that you're stuck at school. Like, you know, it's such a poignant thing to watch and a kind of fun thing to watch. It's also sad, of course, but then we get to the third act and we find out that these two characters have giant chips on their shoulders and they're going through terrible things as well. And, you know, it kind of reinforces the idea you never know what someone's going through until, you know, you actually get down to the core of them and they tell you, or you make enough of a connection to have them trust you and tell you, hey, I'm going through this awful thing too. And maybe it's not the same thing as you, but it's really affecting me and it's awful. And I don't know what I'm going to do either. You know, I just loved the juxtaposition of all of that. And it's, I think Mike talked about how it's a simple movie, but there's a lot of these complex themes that bounce off each other a lot. And it's easy to understand. It's simple, but it's also it's just complex ideas, and it's not something you would necessarily expect. All three of those main actors should either win or definitely be nominated for Oscars. And I think I'm just sitting. After I watched the movie, I was like, okay, who's my favorite? And it's hard as hell to pick. Divine Joy Randolph, never seen her in anything. Paul Giamatti is just a classic actor. I adore the man. Been a huge fan for years. But for me, Dominic Sessa is the standout, and he's who I'd love to see, because maybe he's because he represents the future, and you know, like kind of like the point Matt was making earlier in our episode, that who knows what the future of movies is going to be like because of the economy and all that shit. It's a whole complex issue, but it's refreshing to see such a talented young actor absolutely going pound for pound up against Paul Giamatti, and still having the ability to stand out amongst a titan of the screen like that. At least that's what I would consider him. So he's kind of my standout, but the three of them were just so incredible. I'm so floored by great performances. It can make a bad movie incredible, and or at least make it memorable. And you have three powerhouse performances in this movie. So just an incredible movie. It's classic but complex at the same time. It's fresh, but it takes place 50 years ago. You know, it's so many great things all at once. Easy choice for my number one movie of the year, The Holdovers.
Nice. Well said. Cool. That makes me super happy.
I'm glad one of us has it in there. That's awesome.
Oh, me too.
Thanks.
Me too.
Awesome.
Well said. So now we have come to my number one movie of 2023. Here we go. It's Godzilla -1.
That's my top three.
Yeah.
We have my top three.
Yep.
That's so cool. I love that.
Absolutely. This movie was just incredible. And one of the things that it kind of bothers me a little bit, and I don't want to be negative right off the bat, but something that kind of sticks out in terms of the reactions to this movie, it's like a common thread of people saying that, like, oh, I can't believe I cared about the human characters in a Godzilla movie, or I can't believe that a Godzilla movie could make me cry. And like, that's true. That's what this movie does. It has a very good emphasis on the human characters. It has very emotional stakes, very emotional consequences, and it tells a very emotionally charged story. The issue that I have is that Godzilla as a property has been doing that for decades. like the original Godzilla movie is one of my favorites of all time, and it includes like a scene in which, like, following his attack on Tokyo, there is a scene where the film lingers on a Geiger counter being read on a child and beeping very loudly. And it lingers on that. And I'm just like, if you don't feel emotion in that, or if you don't remember that, then I don't know what to tell you. But like that, and then there's another scene in the original movie where a woman is clutching her 2 children and saying, we're about to be like reunited with daddy. We're going to go where daddy is now. And it's like, it's heartbreaking. But Godzilla -1 does similar things and has similar stakes. It is, I'm probably going to get this all wrong, but what I understand is that obviously like Legendary has Godzilla rights here in the States, so they have the Legendary verse or whatever, the monster verse that we have here, including Godzilla King of the Monsters, Kong versus Godzilla, all that, Monarch, the new show on Apple TV Plus. But this is a Toho movie. This is Japanese, obviously. It's from Toho Studios. They will come out with a Godzilla movie every now and then. The most recent one before this was 2016, Shin Godzilla. I didn't see it, but I've heard great things. But Godzilla -1 repositions it. It makes it post-war Japan, immediately post-war Japan, and it does such an amazing job at painting just the despair of the people of Japan following the war. And what I loved is that the protagonist of the movie is someone who has this immense guilt, not only has immense guilt over not being someone who found themselves capable enough to fulfill their kamikaze mission, but also the way that the people around him shame him for that and see him as cowardly, and how the entire movie is built around him trying to redeem himself for something that is so it feels very Japanese, very part of their culture specifically, and it's something that really, really resonated with me as someone who is not Japanese. Like I'm American dude, but like the fact that I could be so invested in a culture on screen, it's like that's like I'm pinpointing exactly what the magic of movies are. It's what Ebert said. It's empathy machines, but the way that it tells that story, and the way that there's that recurring line about how everyone is still fighting their own war and how they band together to try to take down Godzilla, is just incredibly emotionally charged storytelling. And in addition to all of that, like Mike, like what you said, the action, the destruction, the force of Godzilla is astounding. Yeah, absolutely crazy. Astounding. It's horrific. The Ginza set piece where he destroys Ginza is like there's a moment at the end of that set piece, and I won't give away anything, but it shocked me. Like I gasped in the theater, and I was just like, this is an amazing movie. Not to mention that the soundtrack is amazing. It includes several instances of like old Godzilla music cues, like that Ginza attack includes an iconic piece of music from Mothra versus Godzilla, I think, or Godzilla versus Mothra. I might be transposing those, but and then the original score for Godzilla comes into play at one point as well. It's just it is a beautiful just sci-fi horror action movie, basically, monster movie. It's phenomenal, and I love it. It's Godzilla -1. I can't wait to watch it again. I really wish I would have made the time to go see it in the theater again, but it's my favorite movie of the year, Godzilla -1.
Man, that's awesome. I really want to see that.
Yep. Cannot argue with that. I think we say this a lot, but like in a different year, I could see it being number one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean the human story as well as the depiction of Godzilla himself.
Yeah.
Excellent movie.
Yeah. And
such
like
a surprise.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things about doing what we do and everything, is that like I had no idea that Godzilla -1 was coming out. I had no idea. Like,
yeah, right.
It's awesome. It's awesome that
not on my most anticipated of the year.
No,
and I heard great things, and it just it totally paid off.
Yep. Awesome. But yeah. But yeah, that's those are our top 10 lists. Yeah. Good year, very good year for movies.
Great year. One of the better years in a long time.
Yeah,
I actually struggled with the bottom of my list to which should I include. Oppenheimer was on there for a long time.
Yeah, it's the strongest post-pandemic year.
Easily.
For movies. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So the past couple of years we've been, I can't remember when we started, but we've been doing the thing where we kind of pick an official OV podcast top 3.
Yes.
So I'm looking at our lists, and we could. So all 3 of us have a different number 1. We can do that.
Yep.
We could also do like what.
Unfortunately, you guys. I don't think you guys have Spider-Man on. I don't think we can include. Is it? Well, is it Holdovers, Barbie?
Holdovers, Godzilla -1, and Spider-Man are the top, are number 1s. But then, like, what appears on all our lists, we all have Barbie, and we all have the Holdovers. But that's it. Like, so what's number 3?
Right.
Like, it could be Oppenheimer, it could be Spider-Man, it could be Godzilla -1. Like, I don't know I'm not sure how we pick it this year.
Yeah, me neither. I
think we could all agree, or at least I could concede that the Holdovers is our collective favorite.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
It gets the Obsessive Viewer endorsement as the collective movie of the year.
I'm good with that.
Yeah,
I'm good with that too.
Yeah. Do we want to just say that that's the movie of the year for the Obsessive Viewer?
That's the OV movie of the year. The
all
Holdovers.
right. Nice.
That works.
Nice. Awesome. And thank you so much, Tiny, for pointing that out, because I've kind of completely spaced that part of the podcast.
I've been thinking about it the whole time. I'm like, how the hell are we going to pick this?
I know. Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But also going back to talking about most anticipated movies, since we have talked about our top 10 lists, we're going to wind down. We're almost done. Tiny is about to turn 37 in 37. Yeah, in 15 minutes. But what
do you say that as like a we're almost done? Just stay with us.
Yeah. I've just been very conscious of the time, because like I know Mike, you have a 2-hour delay at work tomorrow.
Ooh, it's late. Yeah, it's
Tiny, late. I know you have a big boy job. Yeah. So anyway, we're pushing midnight here, but anyway, 2024 movies we're looking forward to. And, Mike, do you want to get us kicked off with any movies that you're looking forward to in 2024?
Sure. Looking forward to Dune Part 2. Loved the first half. I am looking extremely forward to Robert Eggers' Nosferatu.
Oh yeah.
I love Robert Eggers. And then the third one is a little tough because Ty West and Mia Goth's Maxine, except that Mia Goth is in the news for kicking an extra in the head and going on a bit of a diva tirade. Mm-hmm. So that bums me out quite a bit. It's one of those ones where, I don't know, I mean, I'll probably see it, but it'll definitely be tainted by knowing that. I'm just so curious to see the fallout there. That sucks. That sucks that she's not a cool person, because I love X and I love Pearl. And then my number one most anticipated would have been Scream 7, but
did Beyond the Spider-Verse get pushed to 2025?
I think it did. Yeah.
Okay, I think so too. Yeah. So those are your most anticipated movies of 2024. Tiny, I can't believe I'm going to say the exact same thing I said last year, but what is your most anticipated movie of the year, and why is it Dune Part 2?
Yeah, obviously Dune Part 2. Can't wait. For all the reasons we all know. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the books and everything, so can't wait for that. But then also, kind of a close second, Deadpool 3. I mean,
nice.
I adore the Deadpool movies. Like, they're just so unbelievably funny. Like, I rewatched them like a week ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
So really looking forward to that. And then I don't know that I have a third one really. I mean, Twisters, Ghostbusters. We'll see. I don't know. Gladiator 2. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they're question marks in my opinion. We'll see. But I'm cautiously curious to see what happens with those movies.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've got a few on my list. Abigail, which was just recently announced. There's a trailer out. I haven't watched it, but it's a radio silence movie with Melissa Barrera, a ballerina ghost story or something like that. Looking forward to that. There's a VHS sequel coming out on Shudder later in the year, presumably. That is supposed to, I think the announcement said that it's going to be more kind of sci-fi horror, which I'm very pumped for.
Cool.
Despite the trailer being a little bit concerning, Alex Garland's Civil War, very curious how that's going to be.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's more curiosity than excited.
Yeah, something that I've seen talked about is like the trailer makes it look like the like left-wing equivalent of like uber conservative like movies that and I'm like, that I hate so much that is on point. But it was just announced that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are working on 28 Years Later. So,
I
can't.
Nice.
Yeah. When we were talking about Cillian Murphy, like 2004, I saw 28 Days Later, and he was on my radar from then. But Civil War, I'm curious and interested in. Twisters, I'm excited about. I love the first movie. Dune Part 2, of course. And then, hoping that this gets a release this year, I presume that it will, but Mike Flanagan's The Life of Chuck. I adore that novella so much, and I think that it has so much potential to be a top-tier King adaptation, especially with the Prince of King adaptations doing it, Mike Flanagan. So those are my ones I'm looking forward to. We are continuing to be weekly on the podcast, so we're going to be covering as many of these movies as possible. So, I'm excited. This is like the 12th consecutive week that we've had an episode, and tomorrow I'm recording episode 412, and then next Monday I'm recording episode 413. Big,
very cool,
big times.
Nice.
The final thing I want to bring up is, are there any 2024 viewing goals or things that you want to emphasize in your movie viewing for 2024? That can be numbers, that can be specific like genres or filmmakers you want to explore. Anything that you have on your mind going into 2024 with movie watching. Anything you guys got in the hopper?
Yep, I'm just trying to hit 200 again. Kind of a always goal of mine is to watch old horror movies.
Nice.
And stop buying Blu-rays and DVDs that I don't plan on watching that night.
Nice. Tiny, any goals or projects or things?
I really just to try to be better. Try to see more. Try to see more relevant movies from the year.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it, really. I didn't talk about this year about the fact that TV is more of an emphasis for me. I did watch a lot of TV this year. I still watch a lot of shows that come out every year. I'm still an obsessive viewer. I still consider myself an obsessive viewer. It's just movies have kind of taken a back seat. So, but yeah, just try to be better. We'll see what 2024 brings.
Yeah. Well, and like, I've always been, at least in the last several years, I've always been just like, we watch what we watch. I think that what we bring to the table is like eloquently speaking about the movies that we enjoy. So like, yeah. Like you can watch 84 movies in 2024, but we can still spend 3.5 hours talking about them, no matter what. But
amen to that.
Yeah.
Totally.
And it's funny because the whole TV thing also is that Letterboxd is apparently later this year going to implement television into the site. I don't know what that's going to look like. I hope that it's not bundled together. But
yeah, I don't want to.
I'm not sure if I want that.
Yep. My best case scenario thought is that it's going to at least, like, the only thing that I want, the main thing that I want is that I want it to be separate from movies. Like, I want it to be a thing where, like, if you look at your stats, you can differentiate between movies and TV. That's the important thing for me. So we'll see what it does. But as for me, viewing and goals and emphases and everything, I've mentioned before, I am such a goober for the Criterion channel. Now that I have an annual subscription, so I have 1 year. I have a list on Letterboxd where I'm tracking everything that I watch for that year. Like it's called 1 year of Criterion channel, December 24th, 2023 to December 23rd, 2024. It has 24 movies on it right now. And that's something I'm really excited about because I keep doing the math, and like I keep thinking about how 20, 30 years ago we had Blockbuster where we would spend $3, $4 to have a movie for 3 nights and then return it. And like the cost of the Criterion channel, the cost to me was $100. And in less than a month, I have watched enough to where it averages out to that total price being about $4 per movie. I just think that that's kind of fascinating. I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah. But once again, thank you so much to Carol for facilitating that. But that is my main goal, to kind of track that. My other goal is obviously, as I said before, going weekly with Obsessive Viewer, an Obsessive Viewer episode every Thursday that I can manage it. That is the goal, and I'm very excited to do that, and hopefully be able to grow the show as well. So that's always on the back of my mind, but I'm making an effort this year. So if you're listening to this, if you enjoyed it, subscribe, rate us all over the place, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and write a review and everything to help support us. And if you feel like donating, check out Patreon. I have a whole thing. So before we get to the actual end, is there anything else we want to say to close out 2023 on the Obsessive Viewer podcast?
I don't think so.
No. Good year. Love you guys.
Yep. Good year.
All right. Yep. Always a blast. So thank you guys I have a whole script now. This is going to sound so just read because I'm reading it. But anyway, thank you guys for another year of supporting the podcast. There's going to be a lot of podcast content coming your way in 2024. Of course, the Obsessive Viewer isn't all that we do. You can check out my solo podcast, Anthology, where I review The Twilight Zone and other sci-fi anthology shows. And you can hear Tiny and myself and frequent guests as well on Tower Junkies, talking all things Stephen King. And finally, as I said throughout this episode, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of exclusive episodes on our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And you also get early access to episodes each week now. You can also find an archive of all of the stuff that I did in writing and podcasting in 2023 at obsessiveviewer.com/matthurt2023. And if you'd like to check out the stuff I'm doing throughout 2024, you can find that at obsessiveviewer.com/matthurt2024. Jesus. Links to all this is in the show notes. I'm going to start playing us out once again. Thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you guys for joining me on this. And it's always a blast, and I can't wait to do more podcasting with you guys for many, many years to come. So yeah. All right.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks for keeping it going and doing all you do, bud.
For sure.
Do what I can. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week. And now, enjoy this short clip from our Patreon exclusive feed. For this and more exclusive content, join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Those are my podcast stats for 2023. The overall stats are total number of episodes. I had 35 episodes. That doesn't include the submitted for your approval episode that I was a guest on. Those are just my podcast episodes. 35 episodes that totaled out to 2 days, 12 hours, 15 minutes and 5 seconds of content on the main feeds of the podcasts. And so, yeah, that's the 2 days, 2.5 days worth of audio. 2.5, like, here's the thing. If you listened to every episode of Obsessive Viewer, Tower Junkies, and Anthology, I was in your ears for 2.5 days. And also, I spent 2.5 days of my life talking into a microphone for podcasts, which is just a crazy thing to think about. And that's not even the most that I did or anything, because now we're going to get into the Patreon of it all. And here's the thing that kind of seems like it is a trend with me with Patreon. So, this isn't a goal that I set. This is just how the chips fall. This is how things go. It seems like consistently, year after year, I record about twice as many things, or I spend twice as much time recording Patreon content than I do recording main podcast content. And that's because I love doing Patreon stuff. It's stuff that I do by myself, so it's a lot more frequent, and it's stuff that oftentimes it's not full-fledged episodes. It's a lot of like immediate reactions and things of that nature. So I don't know. It's just weird how it just shakes out that it's usually twice as much as on the main feeds. So without further ado, let me go into my breakdown of Patreon content in 2023. That is it for my Patreon stats. All told, over the year, over 2023, I released 155 episodes on Patreon. And that totaled out to 4 days, 19 hours, 21 minutes, and 59 seconds, which is insane to me. I'm just so thrilled that I have, like I say this all the time, I'm so thrilled that I have a platform to do this kind of thing, because I really love doing this. But also the fact that, like, you listening to this, you're willing to give me money to do the thing that I love to do. And that is incredibly meaningful to me. It is something I am so incredibly grateful for. And I mentioned this in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our reviews, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on all of our shows, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, plus plenty of written reviews, visit obsessiveviewer.com. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and help grow our community. If you want to support the show and help keep us going while getting early access to new episodes as well as a steady stream of exclusive content, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.